The smell of ozone and hot metal was Adrian Hale's preferred conversation substitute. In the cavernous, grease-stained belly of Maintenance Deck 4 of the Meridian Interstellar Academy, sound was a predictable comfort. It was a symphony of structure, the hydraulic hiss of bulkhead doors, the rhythmic thud of recycler pistons, the distant, high-pitched whine of plasma cutters welding armored plating 3 levels down. Here, Adrian Hale, 18 years old and functionally invisible, was in his element. He was a human student at an academy bursting with thousands of beings from 100 different systems, and he had mastered the art of being overlooked. While other humans at Meridian, a minority by a significant margin, strove for high marks in diplomacy, xenotactics, or corporate law, Adrian had opted for the applied engineering track. It was a glorified term for the station's mechanic apprenticeship. While they networked, he calibrated. While they debated, he welded. His face, often smudged with conductive grease, was unremarkable. His file listed him as an orphan, subsidized by a low-tier galactic compact grant. He kept his hair short, his words shorter, and his eyes on his work. He preferred the company of a malfunctioning hydrospanner to the chaotic, posturing masses in the station's upper-level Harmony plazas. Machines were honest. You applied the right torque. They turned. You gave them power. They ran. They didn't lie. They didn't posture. And they didn't form gangs. Meridian Academy, orbiting the busy trade planet of Gildan 4, was the transit hub of the Galactic Compact. It was less a school, and more a pressurized, high-speed social experiment. The official prospectus spoke of diversity and unity. Reality was a brutal, competitive ecosystem. Every species brought its own culture, its own prejudices, and its own definitions of strength. The Academy's official laws were strict, but its unofficial culture was savage. Adrian was currently elbow-deep in the cooling vents of a Series 7 gravlift, a piece of pre-compact tech that the official teaching staff had declared obsolete. Adrian found it elegant. He was tracing a microfracture in the primary power coil, a fault that had grounded the lift for a month. "There you are," he murmured, his fingers tracing the spiderweb crack. He wasn't talking to himself. He was talking to the machine. "They kept trying to patch you with plasma? Idiots! You don't patch a fracture, you bridge it." He prepped a silver filament wire, his movements economical and precise. He didn't need the diagnostic overlay. He could feel the energy flow in the wiring, a subtle hum against his fingertips. A chime sounded. His shift was over, 1,500 hours. He carefully sealed the panel, giving the smooth metal a respectful pat. "Later," he promised. He cleaned his hands on a solvent-soaked rag, the sharp smell cutting through the metallic tang. It was time to ascend from the station's logical gut to its chaotic, illogical upper decks. The central concourse at Meridian was a sensory assault. The air was thick with 1,000 alien perfumes, spices, and pheromones. The sound was a dull roar of a dozen languages, punctuated by the sharp clack of Vex species talons on the polished floors, or the low, vibrating growl of the car. Adrian kept his head down, his path optimized for minimal interaction, weaving through the dense crowd. He passed a trio of tall, crystalline Aurelians who seemed to glitter under the artificial sunlight, and sidestepped a lumbering, four-armed Thalox who was arguing loudly with a food vendor droid. Then he saw it. It was the kind of scene that made his stomach coil. A cultural dispute. The administration called it. A ring of spectators had formed near the transport nexus. The ring was silent, which was the most dangerous sound at Meridian. In the center, 3 figures stood over a fourth. The 3 standing were Iron Dunes. Adrian's internal sensors went to full alert. The Iron Dunes were a gang of mixed off-worlders, mostly human and near-human hybrids, bound by a shared worship of Car Dominion ideology. They were brutal, territorial, and despite Academy prohibitions deeply entrenched, they were distinguished by the dull, iron oxide tattoos that snaked up their necks and faces. The figure on the floor was human, small, new. Adrian recognized the uniform new arrival orientation fatigues. The kid couldn't have been at the station more than 2 days. He was thin, maybe 15 years old, and he was trembling, a data slate shattered at his feet. New rule, flesh bag. The leader of the Dunes, a broad-shouldered brute named Kalen, sneered. His voice was a gravelly imitation of the car warriors he idolized. You spill my synthicaf, you pay the tithe. I'm sorry, the new kid stammered, his voice cracking. I didn't see you. I can pay for it. Ornage. Oh, he'll pay for it. Another Dune laughed. Kalen held 2 fingers, then 1. You know the ritual. Kid, we're traditionalists. The Iron Dunes honor the old ways. And the way of the Dominion is the penalty of 21. A collective, sick understanding rippled through the crowd. The 21 beatings. It was a barbaric, hazing ritual, banned in triplicate by the Meridian Accords. Yet it persisted. 21 blows, delivered by the offended party, to teach respect. It was a thinly veiled assertion of dominance. The new kid, Nate Arlen, according to the name tag he hadn't yet learned to hide, looked around desperately. He saw hundreds of faces, alien and human, and not one moved to help him. Security monitors, usually omnipresent, were pointed conveniently at the ceiling. Kalen cracked his knuckles. They were augmented with kinetic studs, turning a punch into a localized explosion. Adrian's protocol was clear. Do not engage. Do not interfere. Do not be seen. He had followed it for 3 years. He had seen shakedowns, honor duels, and cultural misunderstandings that ended in medbay visits. He had always walked away. He took a step, then another. He was almost past the ring. Please, Nate Arlen whispered. It was a sound of absolute despair. Adrian stopped. His eyes closed for 1 second. He sighed. It was a sound of profound self-loathing. The sound of a man watching his carefully constructed quiet life about to detonate. Damn it, he breathed. He turned. He didn't push through the crowd. He found the seam, slipping between a Vex and a human student with practiced ease, and stepped into the circle. The sudden silence was absolute. Hey, Adrian said. His voice was calm, if slightly rusty. Kalen paused, his studded fist halfway to the kid's face. He looked at Adrian, his brow furrowing. What? Who the hell are you? Nobody, Adrian said, which was the simple truth. He looked at the new kid, Nate. You with me, kid? Nate looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and confusion. I don't know him. Sure you do, Adrian said, his voice flat. He put himself between Kalen and Nate. He's running an errand for me, in maintenance. Dropped my toolkit. My fault. He nudged Nate with his foot. Get up. We're late. Kalen stared. Then he laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Late, you think you're late mechanic scum. You think you can just walk in here and claim property. He's not property. He's a human, Adrian said, his gaze fixed on Kalen's augmented knuckles. And he's a waste of your time. He's got no credits, no status. He's just new. He spilled my coffee, Kalen said, his amusement fading into a cold glare. And the tithe must be paid. 21, that's the rule. You're interrupting, that's a problem. Right. The rules, Adrian said. He took a deep breath, tasting the stale, recycled air. Okay, so, he owes a debt, 21. That's right, Kalen snarled, stepping closer. I'll cover it. The statement hung in the air. Kalen looked baffled. What? His debt. I'll take it, Adrian said. He turned his back to Kalen, facing Nate. He spoke quietly. Get behind me. And whatever happens, stay there, don't move. Nate scrambled behind him, grabbing the back of Adrian's oil-stained work tunic. Adrian turned his head slightly, looking back at Kalen over his shoulder. One condition. You don't make conditions. You don't touch the kid. Not one hit. You give me all 21, and the debt is paid. Clear. Kalen's baffled expression melted into a cruel, delighted grin. He had never seen such stupidity. This was better than beating a terrified first year. This was a show. Oh, the debt is clear, Kalen said. He motioned to his two cronies, who fanned out, blocking any escape. The crowd of spectators pressed in closer, their data slates and eye implants lit up. They were all recording. One, Kalen said. He swung. The first blow was a short, brutal jab to Adrian's kidney. The kinetic stud discharged. It wasn't just a punch. It was a shockwave. Adrian grunted, his knees buckling, but he didn't fall. He braced himself, feet planted wide, his arms crossed over his chest, his head down. He had become a human shield. Two, a heavier swing, this one aimed at the ribs. Adrian heard a crack. It might have been his. It might have been the armor weave in his tunic. Pain, white and sharp, lanced up his side. Three, a boot, steel-toed to the back of his knee. He went down on one leg, but immediately forced himself back up, refusing to give Kalen the satisfaction. Behind him, Nate was sobbing. Stop! Just stop! Shut up, kid, Adrian gasped, spitting blood onto the deck. Stay behind me. 4, 5. The blows rained down. They were no longer precise. They were furious. Kalen was enraged that Adrian was still standing, that he wasn't begging. The other two Dunes joined in, fists and feet. They were supposed to be Kalen's 21 hits, but the mob mentality had taken over. Adrian didn't fight back. He didn't throw a punch. He just endured. His mind detached. Went to the workshop. This was just a system. A painful, stupid biological system. Pain was an input signal. You could manage the signal. Right rib, compromised, left kidney. Critical failure, spine. Integrity holding. 10. A blow to the side of his head. The world went starry and gray. 11. He could feel Nate, small and terrified, clinging to his back. The one solid point in a universe of pain must stay standing. 15. Kalen was breathing heavily now, his face purple. This was taking too long. The mechanic was supposed to be pulp. 16. 17. He was on his knees. He could no longer stand, but he kept his back to the attackers. His body curled around the negative space where Nate was hiding. 18. A final, vicious kick to the chest. Adrian fell forward, landing flat on his stomach, his arms still spread wide as if to shield the floor itself. The circle was utterly silent, save for the sound of Adrian's ragged breathing and Kalen's panting. 21, Kalen spat. Though he had lost count long ago, he wiped his bloody knuckles on his pants. Debt paid. He turned to his cronies. Let's go. The Iron Dunes shoved their way through the crowd, which parted for them like water. They were laughing. The crowd remained. They didn't move to help. They just recorded. The incident, from 20 different angles, was already being uploaded to the Meridian internal network. The footage of the anonymous mechanic taking the 21 beatings, meant for a first year, was already going viral. Adrian lay on the deck for a long time. The pain was a roaring ocean. He tried to push himself up. His arms wouldn't obey. "Are you okay?" Nate Arlen whispered from behind him. Adrian coughed. A spray of red. "Peachy," he rasped. "You good?" "I'm not hurt." "Good," Adrian managed. "That's good." He finally managed to roll over. The world spun. He saw the ring of faces watching him. 100 lenses. 100 alien eyes. He had failed. He hadn't avoided trouble. He was the trouble. The fallout was immediate. Within an hour. The Mechanic's Tithe was the most viewed clip on the station. Within 2 hours, the rumors started. The Iron Dunes weren't just a student gang. They were an unsanctioned recruitment arm for the Car Dominion, a rising military power on the galactic fringe. The infamous Warlord Tharks led the Dominion. And Warlord Tharks was one of Meridian Academy's largest private donors. To interfere with the Iron Dunes was not just a breach of student etiquette. It was a political incident. It was, as the station chatter universally agreed, a death sentence. By 1800 hours, Adrian was summoned, not to the med bay, but to the office of the headmaster. Headmaster Ravel's office was the exact opposite of the maintenance deck. It was at the station's apex, with a panoramic view of Gildan 4 hanging like a blue-green jewel in the void. The floors were polished synthwood. The air smelled faintly of cultivated, non-native blossoms, and the lighting was always set to serene dawn. Headmaster Ravel himself was a tall, elegant human, with a face that looked like it had been sculpted by a committee on reassurance. He smiled constantly, and it never, ever reached his cold, calculating eyes. "Adrian," Ravel said. His voice was smooth, like expensive oil. He was standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "A remarkable day. You have caused a significant disruption to the harmony of this academy." Adrian stood in the center of the plush carpet. He was still bleeding. His left arm hung uselessly at his side, and he was fairly certain 3 of his ribs were shattered. They had not allowed him to clean. It was part of the theater. "Headmaster," Adrian managed. "I have reviewed the footage," Ravel said, turning. His smile widened, becoming a mask of paternal disappointment. "Multiple angles. It's quite comprehensive. You intervened in a documented cultural ritual." "It was a beating, sir," Adrian said, his voice quiet. "It was a dispute," Ravel corrected, his voice hardening just a fraction. "A dispute you escalated through unsanctioned physical intervention. You are not security. You are not an arbitrator. You are an engineering student." "He's a child. They were going to kill him." "Hyperbole." "Adrian, the Iron Dunes are spirited, but they understand limits." "Limits you, however, seem to have forgotten. Do you have any idea what you have done?" "I took a beating," Adrian said, tasting copper. "You embarrassed Warlord Tharks's protégés," Ravel said, the name dropping into the room like a lead weight. "You made the Car Dominion look weak. And you did it publicly." He gestured to a screen. The viral video. "The Car Dominion provides 48% of our private grant funding. Their cultural exchange students, the Iron Dunes, are a vital part of our diverse tapestry." "They're thugs," Adrian said. Ravel's smile vanished. "They are our partners, and you, Adrian, are a problem. You are a grant-funded orphan with no family, no political connections, and, as of this morning, a shockingly low aptitude for self-preservation. Your actions have endangered this institution's financial stability." The logic was so cold, so transactional, it almost made Adrian admire him. Ravel wasn't a headmaster. He was a corporate custodian. "What you did," Ravel continued, walking to his pristine desk, "was not heroic. It was selfish. It was disruptive. And it will be punished. I understand, Adrian said. No, I don't think you do. Ravel steepled his fingers. Effective immediately. You are suspended from all classes and duties. Your access to the Academy mainframe is revoked. You are confined to your designated quarters until further notice. We will conduct a security review of your presence here. It was a soft expulsion. They were throwing him to the wolves. A security review? Adrian asked. Yes, we've already uncovered some anomalies in your file. Your medical records, for instance, they're sealed. Very old, very high-level military-grade encryption. That's curious. For an orphan mechanic, Adrian's blood ran cold, colder than the vacuum outside. I don't know anything about that. We'll find out, Ravel said, his smile returning. We have partners who are very good at opening locked boxes. Helix Crown, for example. They've offered to assist our review. Helix Crown. The name chilled Adrian more than Tharks's. Helix was the omnipresent corporate AI that ran everything from shipping logistics to planetary-scale data mining. They were rumored to be the shadow government behind half the compact. You're dismissed, Adrian. A security detail will escort you to your quarters. Try not to bleed on the carpet. Adrian turned, his body screaming in protest, and left the office. The two security officers, hulking, faceless, in car-supplied armor, flanked him. He was a prisoner. That night, confinement did not hold him. The security detail was lazy. They were Academy guards, not Karshak troops. They expected a half-dead, broken mechanic. They didn't expect a man who had spent 3 years memorizing the station's maintenance schematics. His quarters were in the deep deck sector Epsilon, at 0200. He popped the vent panel in his sanitation unit. The guards were watching a sports broadcast. He was in the maintenance crawlspace in 30 seconds, his broken ribs screaming. He had to go to his workshop. It was the only place he was safe. It was the only place he could think. He moved through the station's bones like a ghost, his body-sized, agonizing rat run. He avoided the pressure sensors, timed the cycling of the air scrubbers. The pain was a constant, roaring fire. But his mind was clear. Ravel isn't just suspending me. He's selling me. Helix Crown didn't assist. They acquired it. He had seen it. A student with a unique genetic quirk, flagged for review, and they were gone a week later. Transferred. He finally dropped from a ceiling grate into the familiar, comforting dark of Maintenance Deck 4. The air smelled of ozone and cool metal. Home. He staggered to his workbench, collapsing onto a stool. The deck was silent, the graveyard shift humming miles away. He fumbled for the low-light lamp, clicking it on. His hands were shaking. He pulled a hidden medkit from beneath a floor plate. He didn't have the clearance for Bacta patches, but he had biofoam and sterile staples. He pulled off his ruined tunic, hissing as the fabric peeled away from dried blood. His torso was a ruin of purple, black, and red. The skin over his ribs was split. "Damn," he whispered. He reached for the biofoam. He paused. His tunic. It was covered in his own blood. Grease and whatever. A dark smear on the shoulder. It was Nate's blood, from the concourse. When the kid had been cut, before the beating. It had smeared on Adrian's tunic when he was shielding him. He stared at the dried, rust-colored stain. He was about to wipe it on a rag, when his gaze drifted to his own chest. Even in low light it was visible. The thing he had hidden his entire life. The thing he kept covered with high-necked undershirts, even in the workshop's sweltering heat. It was a mark, a complex, geometric lattice of raised skin that started at his collarbone and centered perfectly on his sternum. It wasn't a tattoo. It wasn't a scar. It felt forged, an integral part of his bones. The orphanage had called it a birthmark. A 1 in a billion deformity. Adrian instinctively knew it was more. His fingers, still tacky with Nate's blood, moved on their own. He traced the outline of the mark on his chest. The moment his blood-smeared fingertips touched the central node of the birthmark, the world stopped. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling, a cold, deep resonance, like a tuning fork struck in the vacuum of space. A light flared. Adrian looked down. The mark on his chest, the Aegis sigil, a name that flashed in his mind from a place he didn't know was glowing. It wasn't a bright light. It was a deep, silver-blue luminescence that seemed to shine through his skin, not from it. The complex geometry of the mark was suddenly sharp, pulsing with a slow, steady beat, like a heart. The pain in his ribs, the fire in his kidney had vanished, replaced by a sudden, icy clarity. He could feel the sigil thrumming against his sternum, a dormant engine roaring to life. It was reacting to the foreign blood. It was awake. At that exact moment, 0216 station time, two things happened simultaneously. Far outside the station, in the cold, empty blackness beyond Gildan 4's gravity well, Meridian Sector Control registered an impossible event. 13 gravitational anomalies. Perfectly spaced, dropped out of fold space. They were running cold. No engine signatures, no transponders, no heat. They were ghosts. They were silhouettes against the stars, massive, ancient, and terrifying. On the main bridge of Meridian, a terrified sensor tech, a young Vex, shrieked at his superior. The readings were impossible. The ships were angular, draped in cloaking fields that swallowed light. They did not respond to hails. They simply appeared. They were the Phantom Legion, a name from children's ghost stories. The long-dead enforcers of the long-dead human empress, Celine Ashford. And they were here. Back in Ravel's office, the headmaster was screaming at a holographic icon, the swirling, serene, terrifying logo of Helix Crown. 13 unidentified capital ships just appeared on my border. Ravel yelled, his composure shattered. The Dominion is threatening to withdraw. You said this would be quiet. The voice of the Helix AI was calm, synthesized, and utterly inhuman. The arrival of the 13th Legion is an unscheduled variable. However, the primary objective remains. The asset is active. The Aegis sigil has been confirmed. I don't care about a sigil, Ravel shrieked. My station is about to be a war zone. Your station is now a containment zone, Helix replied. The asset, Adrian Hale, cannot be allowed to leave. The biodata you provided in exchange for our political assistance is incomplete. We require the source code. We require him. What are you doing? Ravel whispered, watching his security overrides flash red. Protecting our investment. A station-wide alarm blared. Not a fire drill, not a quarantine. It was the deep, shuddering clang of a full military lockdown. Red lights bathed the corridors. Heavy blast doors slammed down, sealing sector from sector, deck from deck. Adrian, still, staring at the silver light pulsing from his own chest in the darkness of the workshop, heard the alarms. He heard the heavy thud of the blast doors sealing maintenance deck 4. A calm, synthesized voice, the voice of the Academy's public address system. But one he had never heard before echoed through the station. For your security, the Helix voice purred across Meridian. The Academy is now under a mandatory lockdown. No transport in or out. Please remain calm. Helix Crown is now managing all station security protocols. Your safety is our primary concern. The Aegis sigil faded. The light in his chest receded, not like a lamp being extinguished, but like a star sinking back below a horizon of skin and bone. The thrum against his sternum quieted. But it did not go cold. For the first time in his life, Adrian Hale felt no pain. His broken ribs, the fire in his kidney, the constellation of bruises, they were gone. Not masked, healed. He touched his side, pressing fingers against the spot Kalen had cracked. The skin was smooth, the bone beneath solid. He took a deep, shuddering breath, and it didn't hurt. It felt clean. The silver-blue light was gone, but the feeling remained. A cold, focused energy that hummed just beneath his hearing, centered in his chest. Sigil was awake, and it was waiting. The lockdown alarms were a dull, distant clang. He was sealed in. Maintenance Deck 4 was his fortress, and now his cage. Ravel had suspended him. Helix had locked him in. Asset. The Helix AI's voice from Ravel's office replayed in his mind. They're not selling me out, he realized with a chilling certainty. They're buying me. He needed information. He ran to his workbench. His movements no longer pained, but sharp, economical. He slapped his hand on the terminal, keying in his credentials. Access denied. Lockdown. Protocol Helix. Damn it, he hissed. He was blind. A flicker of light from the corner of the vast, shadowed bay. Not his lamp. A public access info screen, one of the dozens plastered around the station, was lit up. It was supposed to be showing the lockdown alert. Instead, it was showing a wanted poster. His face, grainy and gray from the concourse security footage, stared back at him. Below it, the stylized, burning iron logo of the Iron Dunes. The cowardly mechanic, Adrian Hale, the text scrolled. You fight for help, but not for yourself. You dishonored the Iron Dunes. We welcome you to Cargo Bay Arena. 6 hours. 0900, bare knuckle. Come and wash our honor. Or we will find the whelp, Nate Arlen, and wash it with him. It wasn't an invitation. It was a threat. And a very public, very clever trap. They're using the kid, Adrian whispered. They knew his weakness. They knew why he had interfered. Ravel's fingerprints were all over this. The headmaster couldn't order Adrian's execution, but he could arrange a spontaneous student duel that went horribly wrong. Helix would get to record the asset under extreme duress. The Dominion would get its blood. Everyone wins. Except me, Adrian muttered. He tried his terminal again, slamming his fist on the console. Denied. Denied. You're going to break your hand. You know. The voice was female, sharp, and laced with an amusement that was profoundly out of place. It came from the ventilation shaft above his workbench. Adrian spun, grabbing the heaviest tool he could reach, a 20-pound kinetic wrench. Who's there? A pair of legs, clad in expensive nanoweave black fatigues, dropped from the grate. They were followed by torso and then face. She landed on his workbench with the easy, silent grace of a cat. She was half human, half Aurelie. She had her human mother's sharp features and unruly dark hair, but her father's Aurelie heritage was impossible to miss. Her skin held a faint, pearlescent shimmer, and her eyes were a startling, luminous gold. Pupils slitted vertically. This was Mira Selene, biochem and xenobiology, top of her class, rumored to have an IQ that qualified as a strategic weapon and a disciplinary file as thick as a reactor core. She was idly spinning a plasma cutter tip between her fingers. "Your security is terrible," she said, her golden eyes scanning his workshop. "I mean, really, a pressure plate sensor. My grandfather's pacemaker is harder to crack." "What do you want?" Adrian said, not lowering the wrench. The entire deck was on lockdown. She shouldn't be here. "What do I want?" She hopped off the bench. "I want to know what it feels like to break a station. I heard a rumor. A nobody mechanic took 21 hits from Kalen's meat fists, got up, and the station went into military lockdown an hour later. Then, 13 ghost ships from a dead empire appeared on the border. Coincidence? I don't know what you're talking about, Adrian said, his grip tightening. Mira laughed. It was a bright, sharp sound in the metallic space. Right. I don't know. Let's try this. You're the most famous man on Meridian. Grease monkey. And you just got an invitation to your own funeral. She pointed at the info screen. How did you get in here? He asked. The lockdown was total. I was already here, she said, tapping the side of her head. I followed the anomaly. The energy signature. It spiked about an hour ago. Right here. She pointed, not him, but his chest. You've got a military-grade power source under that oily shirt, and I'm guessing it's not from the student store. Adrian retreated, instinctively covering his sternum. Mira's expression softened. Just a fraction. Relax. I'm not here to turn you in. I'm here because I hate Ravel. I hate Helic. And I really, really hate the Iron Dunes. They run this place like a high-stakes insurance policy. I like breaking the fine print. She strolled to his locked terminal. So, Ravel and Helix are using the dunes to force you into a fight. They want data. They want to see what the asset does. You heard that Helix's network is loud. If you know how to listen, you, my friend, are the lab rat. And this, she gestured to the cargo bay invitation, is the cheese. You need to know who really set the trap, don't you? I'm locked out, he said, lowering the wrench. You are. I'm not. Mira sat at his console, pulling a data spike from her wrist cuff. A cascade of glowing, golden Aurelian script scrolled across her skin. You, however, know the hardware. Helix has the network, but I'll bet they don't have the station's original schematics. This place was built on old tech. Human Empire tech. He looked at her. What do you need? I need a hardline, a direct path to the central server that bypasses the lockdown routers. I need a physical connection. You're the mechanic. Where's the junction box? A slow smile spread across Adrian's face. It was the first one in years. 5 decks down, he said. In the primary conduit, but it's messy. Messy is my specialty, Mira said, her golden eyes flashing. Lead the way, grease monkey. They moved through the station's guts. Adrian was a master of the physical space, prying open floor plates, sliding down coolant pipes. Mira was his digital echo, her fingers flying across a handheld data slate, disabling sensors a second before they triggered, looping security feeds. Their banter was a rapid-fire staccato in the darkness. Seriously, Mira whispered, as Adrian used a focused magnetic pulse to unlatch a bulkhead. Why are you a mechanic? You've got the skill set of a high-level corporate burglar. Why are you a biochem major? Adrian retorted, holding the heavy door for her. You're a spy. Biochemistry is spying, she said, slipping past him. It's just spying on a cellular level. Finding out what makes things tick. Or, in your case, what makes you glow? They reached the central conduit. It was a humming, vibrating canyon of fiber optic cables and power lines, spanning a zero-gravity chasm. The main junction box was a meter-wide node of ancient, pre-compact hardware. There, Adrian said, pointing. That's the core. Helix will be watching all the new ports, but they won't be watching the diagnostic feeds from the original build. That, Mira breathed, her eyes wide, is beautiful. That's a Series 9 Imperial mainframe. They haven't used these in forever. Can you crack it? Can I crack it? She looked at him, offended. Honey, I can make it sing. Plug me in. Adrian secured her with a safety harness, then plugged her data spike directly into the mainframe's diagnostic port. Mira's eyes closed. The faint, pearlescent shimmer on her skin began to glow, pulsing in time with the data stream. I'm in, she whispered. Her voice was distant. Helix has layers. Thick, black, viscous code. But they're arrogant. They built on top of the old system. They didn't replace it. Adrian watched the chasm below, his wrench in hand, standing guard. Okay, Mira said, her eyes open. They were glowing brightly now. Got it. The duel. Kalen posted the invitation. But the access, oh, this is good. Access was granted from a terminal in Headmaster Ravel's office. He's feeding the wolf. I knew it, Adrian said. It's a trap. It's worse than a trap, Adrian. It's a harvest. Her fingers flew, pulling up new data. Ravel's not just allowing this. He's been curating it for 2 years. Every official punishment, every cultural dispute that went to the adjudicators. Look. She projected a file onto the bulkhead. It wasn't just a video. It was a tidal wave of data. Full biometric telemetry, neural feedback mapping, endocrine and adrenaline level monitoring, blood pressure, heart rate, pain receptor response. It's a pain profile, Mira said, her voice sick. They're not just punishing students. They're recording the experience of it. How much torque does it take to break a Thalox's arm? What frequency of sonic pulse causes a Vex to surrender? What's the precise, multi-spectrum data of a human feeling? Despair. Why? Adrian felt cold. Why would anyone want that to train adaptive weapons? Mira said, her voice brittle. To build a guided missile that doesn't just seek heat. It seeks fear. To design a phaser shield that adapts to an opponent's adrenaline spikes. This isn't a school, Adrian, where it's a trauma farm. And Helix Crown is the farmer. Ravel is just the man who tends the fields. Adrian stared at the scrolling data, his own file among them. 21 hits, adrenaline saturation, endorphin response, minor fractures, tissue regeneration anomalous. They're not just trying to kill me, he said. They're trying to measure me, and they're using Nate to make sure I show up for the test. So, what's the plan? Lab rat, Mira asked, unplugging. You're not gonna fight, are you? Oh, I'm going, Adrian said, his eyes hard. They want to show. They want to see what the asset does under pressure. He looked at his hands, clean, strong, calloused from work. I'm going to give them a demonstration. But not in fighting. In engineering. The cargo bay arena was packed. The lockdown had trapped thousands of students. And they were bored, terrified, and hungry for a distraction. This duel was the only show in town. The Iron Dunes, in full force, formed a ring. Kalen, his face a mask of furious pride, stood in the center, his kinetic-studded knuckles gleaming. Cameras were everywhere. Helix brand security drones hovered like metallic vultures, their red lenses focused. In a shielded observation deck above, Headmaster Ravel stood, his placid smile firmly in place. They had let Adrian escape his quarters. They had opened the path, guiding him to his own execution. Adrian walked into the arena. He wore his simple mechanics fatigues. He was unarmed. Look, Kalen bellowed to the crowd. The coward comes ready to beg. Mechanic. Adrian ignored him. His eyes were scanning the arena. Not the people. The equipment. This was a heavy-lift cargo bay. It was full of possibilities. Magnetic clamps for container locking. High-pressure pneumatic tubes for cargo sorting. Automated, heavy-duty pulley systems. They brought the kid too, a voice said in his ear. He was wearing a microcom, patched by Mira. I see him, Adrian said, his voice a low growl. To the side, held by two of Ravel's personal security, stood Nate Arlen. He looked terrified, but when he saw Adrian, his eyes widened. Are you going to fight them? Mira's voice was tense in his ear. I'm going to win, Adrian replied. Let's get this done. Kalen roared and charged. He was fast for a brute. He swung his studded fist in a wide, powerful arc, aimed at Adrian's head. Adrian didn't block. He dodged. He sidestepped, letting Kalen's momentum carry him past. As he did, his hand shot out and slapped a large, red button on the wall. A deafening hiss filled the air. Kalen skidded to a stop, confused. What? A blast of supercooled, high-pressure CO2 from the pneumatic tube system erupted from a floor vent right under the two dunes standing behind Kalen. The gas hit their boots, instantly flash-freezing the synthetic material. They slipped, their feet going out from under them, and crashed into a heap of uncoordinated, clattering limbs. The crowd gasped, then tittered. You, Kalen snarled, turning. Two more dunes, seeing their friends humiliated, rushed Adrian from the sides. Adrian, two on your left, Mira said. I see them, Adrian said. He was already moving. He ran, not away, but towards a stationary conveyor belt. He vaulted onto it, hit the on switch with his foot, and kept running. The two dunes, not as agile, scrambled onto the moving belt after him. Adrian, anticipating this, hit a second panel, the reverse switch. The belt, moving at high speed, suddenly jerked in the opposite direction. The two thugs, caught completely off guard, were unceremoniously dumped backward into a massive, open container, filled with styrofoam packing peanuts. They vanished in a cloud of white. Laughter. This time, it was loud. In the observation deck, Ravel's smile twitched. Kalen was purple. He's making fools of us. Get him. He and the remaining three dunes cornered Adrian against a stack of cargo containers. No more room to run. Now, mechanic, Kalen growled, advancing. No more tricks. You're right, Adrian said. Just tools. His hand, which had been behind his back, came. He was holding a small, wireless remote. He looked up. Kalen followed his gaze. What? An automated heavy-lift cargo hook, part of the gantry crane system, was descending. Silently, rapidly. Adrian pressed the button. The hook, aimed with a mechanic's precision, snagged the reinforced cargo loop on the back of Kalen's battle vest. Where? Kalen's feet left the ground. He was hoisted 5 feet in the air, sputtering and kicking like a gaffed fish. Last trick, Adrian said, looking at the remaining 3. He pressed another button on his remote. The master switch for the floor-level magnetic clamps. Clang. The 3 remaining dunes, who were all wearing the standard issue, steel-toed combat boots favored by the car, were suddenly and violently stuck to the floor. They looked down, confused, then tried to lift their feet. They couldn't. They were trapped, like flies on flypaper. The arena was in pandemonium. Students were howling with laughter. It was the most humiliating, ridiculous, and brilliant defeat they had ever seen. Adrian Hale hadn't thrown a single punch. He had defeated the Iron Dunes by remote control. The laughter died as if a switch had been thrown. A new figure, one who had not been there a moment before, stepped from the shadows of the cargo bay entrance. He was not a student. He was tall, dressed in the stark, bone white, and black armor of a Car Dominion enforcer. His face was a roadmap of ritual scars. He wore no visible weapons, but he radiated a cold, patient lethality. Sable Ricks, Mira whispered in Adrian's ear. That's Warlord Tharks's personal executioner. What is he doing here? Rix walked past the magnetically stuck dunes, without a glance. He walked past the sputtering, dangling Kalen. He walked directly toward Adrian. Warlord Tharks sends his regards. Rix's voice was a low, sandpaper rasp. He dislikes noise. Rix's eyes were flat, dead black. He looked at Adrian, then his gaze shifted. He moved, not toward Adrian, but toward the side of the arena, toward Nate Arlen. The Warlord also wishes to see the catalyst. Rix's hand, covered in a black armored glove, reached for Nate. The security guards, Ravel's men, took one look at the car enforcer and stepped back. Adrian moved. He didn't think so. He was across the arena in a second, faster than he had any right to be. He put himself between Rix and Nate, his arm outstretched. You don't touch him, Adrian said. His voice was no mechanics. It was cold, hard, and resonant. Sable Rix looked at Adrian, a flicker of professional interest in his dead eyes. Heroism, a fatal, human flaw. Rix struck. It wasn't a brawler's swing, like Kalen's. It was a professional, lightning-fast, open palm strike aimed at Adrian's chest. A blow meant to stop a heart. Adrian tried to block. He raised his forearm. But he was too slow. The force was immense. The blow connected. And the Aegis sigil, hidden beneath his tunic, flashed. This time it was no shine. It was a silent, concussive detonation of silver-blue light. It erupted from Adrian's chest, visible even through the fabric, creating a shimmering, geometric shield in the air. Rix's blow, which could shatter concrete, hit the shield and stopped. The enforcer was thrown backward, as if he had punched a capital ship's hull. He stumbled, his hand smoking, the circuits in his armored glove fried. Rix stared at his ruined hand. He stared at Adrian, who was standing, untouched, a faint, silver after-image of a sigil fading from the front of his shirt. Rix's dead eyes were suddenly, shockingly wide, with fear, with recognition. So, the car enforcer hissed, scrambling to his feet. It is true. The empty throne is not empty. He didn't bow, but he backed away. He gave Adrian a look of profound, terrifying respect. This is no longer a student matter. This is a matter for the Dominion. He turned and stalked from the arena. He left the trapped dunes. He left the hanging Kalen. He just left, in the observation deck. Ravel collapsed into his chair, his face as white as Rix's armor. The station buzzed with the news. The footage was everywhere. The mechanics' prank victory. The appearance of the car enforcer and the flash. The unexplainable, impossible flash of light. Mira had gotten them out. Back to the workshop, through the chaos. In Ravel's office, the headmaster was shaking. He used it. Rix saw it. Tharks will kill us all. The calm, synthesized voice of the Helix AI filled the room. The asset is confirmed. The enforcer, Sable Rix, has seen the sigil. The Dominion is now motivated. Their desire for wealth has grown exponentially, as has their fear. What do I do? Ravel begged. The situation has been simplified. Headmaster, Helix replied, offer them the asset, a gift, in exchange for your safe passage off this station, and a new life under their political protection. Back in the workshop, Mira was pacing. Adrian was sitting on his stool, his head in his hands. Okay, Mira said, running a hand through her hair. Okay, let's recap. You're not just a mechanic. You're a mechanic with a built-in anti-car enforcer, personal defense system. You've humiliated a gang, been targeted by a warlord, and been confirmed by a rogue AI. Did I miss anything? The kid, Adrian said. His voice muffled. It's all about the kid. I might have something on that, Mira said, her voice suddenly serious. While you were playing with pulleys and hooks, I kept digging. I looked into Nate Arlen. She pulled up a file on her data slate. His records are as sealed as yours were. Wiped. But I found something not in the file, but on the surface web. An old, pre-compact news file. She projected an image. It was a close-up of Nate's wrist, from the concourse footage. There was a faint, star-shaped birthmark. That's not a birthmark, Adrian, she said, tapping the screen. It's an optical key. It's a biometric marker, and it matches the genetic identifiers of the old Ashfordian royal line. Adrian looked up, his blood running cold. The line of Empress Selene? Exactly, Mira said, her golden eyes intense. The woman the Phantom Legion answers to, as if summoned. The view from a nearby porthole shifted. The station's broadcast channels, which had been playing the lockdown alert, dissolved into static. The 13 ghost ships, which had been holding at the system's edge, were now in high orbit. They hung in the blackness over Meridian, silent, massive, and patient. The static on the channels resolved. It wasn't a video feed. It was an audio signal. A simple, coded message, playing on a loop, in a voice that sounded as old as the stars. Aegis, acknowledged. Adrian and Mira stared at each other. The board was clear. Ravel thinks Nate is the key, Adrian said, the pieces clicking into place. A lost prince. He thinks he can use Nate to control the Legion. But he's not the key, Mira said, her gaze fixed on Adrian's chest. He's the bait. He was bait to draw you out. Sigil the Aegis, you're the one they're acknowledging. Adrian stood up. He looked at the data slate, the proof of Ravel's and Helix's trauma farming. He looked at the porthole, at the waiting ghosts. We can't stay here, he said. We're a little busy, Mira shot back. We're suspended. I'm an unregistered accomplice. The station is on military lockdown, and we're surrounded by a ghost fleet and the Car Dominion. Leaving is not exactly on the menu. Ravel and Helix are partners, Adrian said, his voice hardening. He tapped the terminal, where Mira's stolen data was cached. They're selling pain, we have the proof. He looked at her, a new, cold fire in his eyes. We're not just leaving, Mira, we're breaking out. We're taking Nate. We're taking this data, and we're going to show the entire compact exactly what Ravel's diverse tapestry is really made of. Mira stared at him for a long second. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. You're clinically insane. I love it. One problem. Grease monkey. How exactly do we get out of a locked-down station surrounded by 2 hostile fleets? Adrian walked over to a bulkhead and placed his palm on the cool metal. He could feel the station's ancient hum, its hidden pathways. This station isn't a box. Mira, he said, a small, confident smile touching his lips. It's a machine, and machines. He gave the bulkhead a familiar, respectful pat. Always have a back door. The back door was not a door. It was a garbage chute. Specifically, it was the primary solid waste disposal line for the upper decks. A 10-kilometer-long tube that ran from the luxury quarters down to the plasma reclamation furnaces. And, Adrian knew, its internal network controls had not been updated in a decade. You want us to climb down a garbage chute? Mira's voice was a scandalized whisper in the darkness of the service corridor. They were 2 decks above the cargo bay, hiding behind a humming power inverter. I want us to ride the outside of it, Adrian corrected, lashing a fiber optic cable to a support beam. We're going to rappel, Helix is watching the lifts, the stairs, and the network. They are not watching the unpressurized, high-radiation waste tunnel. Of course not. Why would they? Mira deadpanned, securing her data slate. You know, when I imagined my glorious life of academic rebellion, it featured less industrial filth. It's this, or get captured by Ravel's goons, who are, by the way, 3 minutes from this position. How do you know? Because you just looped their comms, and the sergeant is complaining about his boots, Adrian said. Now, where's Nate? Mira tapped her slate. They moved him. He's not in cargo bay holding. He's, clever. They've put him in the transient intake wing, holding cell 4. It's on the way down. Then we're making a stop, Adrian said. He clipped his harness to the cable. Ready. Am I ever, Mira muttered, clipping in beside him. If I get tetanus, I am billing you personally. Shield bearer. Don't call me that, he said, and kicked off the ledge. They descended into the roar of the station's hidden machinery. The rescue was, as Mira later described it, disgustingly efficient. Adrian bypassed the cell's maglock by physically rewiring the junction box from the ceiling, causing the door to simply fall off its hinges. Nate Arlen, who was curled up on a metal slab, looked up as the two of them dropped into the cell. Adrian. Hey, kid, Adrian said, offering a hand. Are you up for a field trip? Nate just nodded, his eyes wide. No time for sentimental reunions, boys, Mira hissed from the corridor. Security is unlooping. We have 90 seconds. They didn't go back to the chute. They went down, through crew ladders, into pressurized steam tunnels, and past the massive, churning gears of the station's rotational gravity rings. They were moving into the station's forgotten history, its industrial foundations. Finally, Adrian stopped at a massive, circular bulkhead. It was rusted, ancient, and sealed with a heavy mechanical wheel. Where are we? Nate whispered. This, Adrian said, putting his shoulder to the wheel and grunting as he turned it. Is the underdock. A hiss of stale air escaped as the seal broke. The bulkhead groaned open, revealing a space that was the antithesis of Ravel's serene apex. The underdock was a city of steam and scrap. It was a vast, unpoliced cavern in the station's sublevels, originally designed as a deep space repair bay, and long since abandoned by the Academy. It was filled with the people Meridian preferred to forget unregistered mechanics, migrant laborers, and families of the uncredentialed who lived in modular habitats welded to the station's inner hull. The air smelled of metallic dust, welding plasma, and strangely spiced stew. It was loud, chaotic, and, to Adrian, it was perfect. A hulking, four-armed Thalox mechanic was welding a support strut. Sparks showering down. A group of Vex, their crystalline forms clicking, were rerouting a power cable. And sitting on a crate, cleaning a fuel injector, was an old human. He was bald, heavily muscled, and had a magnificent, grease-stained gray beard. His coveralls were older than Adrian. He looked up, his eyes sharp. Jorg, Adrian said, nodding. Hail, the old man grunted, his voice like gravel. He looked at Mira, then Nate. You're supposed to be in your quarters, suspended, and in a lot more pain, from what I heard. Plans changed, Jorg, Adrian said. We need a place. Shielded, off the network. Jorg stared at him, then at the newsfeed playing on a cracked screen behind him. It showed the iron dunes, still stuck to the floor of the cargo bay. A slow, rusty smile spread across his face. Magnetic clamps, Jorg rumbled, appreciating the work. Classic. You always were a smartass, Kid, you embarrassed Ravel, and you got the car enforcer to back down. You've got guts. I've got trouble, Adrian corrected. And I'm bringing it with me. Trouble's the only currency down here. Son, Jorg said. He stood, tossing the injector aside. We've got a shielded generator room. They used it to calibrate warp coils. Not even Helix can hear you sneeze there. Follow me, and try not to touch anything. You look expensive. He aimed this last comment at Mira. I am... As a matter of fact, Mira said, stepping neatly over a leaking hydraulic line. But I'm also the one who can keep those blast doors from slamming in your faces. So, show a little respect. Gramps. Jorg actually laughed, a harsh, barking sound. I like her. She's got teeth. The shielded room was a cramped, copper-walled cage behind a massive, humming generator. It was warm, dry, and most importantly, completely offline. Jorg left them, sealing the door. Yell if you need anything. We're having stew. The moment the door closed, Mira had her biosampler out. Sit, she ordered Adrian. I'm fine, he said. You're an anomaly. You took a full-force, kinetic-studded beating 24 hours ago, and you're rappelling down garbage chutes. I want to know why. And I want to know what that, she pointed at his chest, is. Adrian hesitated. He'd hidden the sigil his entire life. Look, Mira said, her voice softening. You've got a kid to protect. You've got an entire station's worth of bad guys trying to kill you. And you've got me, your only functional ally with a brain flying blind. I can't help you if I don't know what I'm working with. So, off. Shirt. Now. Adrian sighed. He pulled his tunic off. Mira's professional curiosity overrode any other reaction. She stepped closer, her golden eyes tracing the intricate silver-blue geometry of the dormant sigil. By the stars, she whispered. It's not a tattoo, it's not a scar. It looks woven into your biology. Nate crept closer. It's pretty. It's terrifying, Mira corrected. Okay, I need a sample, but I need it to be active. I need to see the energy signature. Do it again. Make it glow. I don't know how, Adrian said, truthfully. The first time it was Nate's blood. The second time, with Rick's, I was just trying to protect Nate. So let's recreate the parameters, Mira said. All business. She held up her sampler. Think about protecting Nate. Really focus. Feel that whatever it is you felt. Adrian looked at Nate. The kid was watching him with absolute, terrified trust. He fancied 21 hits. He thought about Rick's armored hand reaching. A cold, protective certainty settled in his stomach. He focused that feeling, pushing it toward his chest. A faint, silver-blue light bloomed under his skin. The sigil thrummed. A low, resonant chord. Got it, Mira said, jabbing his arm with the sampler. She took a vial of dark, glowing blood. The light in his chest faded as she turned to her portable analysis kit. While Mira worked, her fingers, flying across holographic displays. Adrian turned to the data slate containing Ravel's files. We know they're farming pain, but why just for weapons? It's never just for weapons, Mira said, not looking up. Okay, blood plasma is saturated with... I don't even know what this is. It's not a protein, it's a command string. A biomorphic key. A key. A key, she confirmed. The base code, it's ancient, imperial. It's, Adrian. This is the Aegis root, this is a legend. This is the biometric key that gave the Imperial Shieldbearers their authority. It's a root-level access key to everything. Shieldbearer, Adrian said, the name feeling heavy. Jorg called me that, 2. The title is real, and you have the key. You're not just a protector. Adrian, you're a system administrator. With a very fancy piece of hardware? Great, Adrian said, rubbing his temples. I'm a glowing, magic-keyed janitor. What about Helix? What are they doing with the pain data? He found the file he was looking for. The Meridian Ethics Council. Oh, that's just Ravel's rubber stamp committee, Mira said, distracted. Is it? Adrian projected the file. It was a list of votes. Council members, a mix of species, approving Helix's security partnerships. Approve experimental research grants. Approving the lockdown. Beside each vote was a code. That's a file link, Mira said, suddenly interested. She tapped the code. A new file opened. It was one of the pain profiles. It showed a Vex council member being subjected to auditory distress. A recording of his larval brood song being played backward. A form of profound psychological torture for his species. They're not convincing the council, Mira whispered, her face pale. They're blackmailing them. They're using the data farm to find everyone's weakness, everyone's leverage point. Ravel isn't a puppet. He's a willing partner in a station-wide protection racket. Helix wasn't just training weapons. It was running the academy. The school wasn't a school. It was a controlled laboratory for maximizing profit through suffering. As if to punctuate the thought, a high-pitched whine came from Mira's scanner. What is that? Adrian asked. It's Nate. Mira's eyes went to the kid, who was sitting in the corner, tracing the star-shaped mark on his wrist. Nate? What are you doing? Nothing, Nate said, panicked. It just itches. Since those big ships came. Mira held the scanner over his wrist. The star-shaped birthmark was pulsing, with a faint, optical light, invisible to the naked eye. It was broadcasting. It's a signal, Mira said, her voice tight. A low-level, high-frequency call. It's broadcasting, Adrian, to 13 distinct, high-orbit coordinates. She looked up, her golden eyes wide. He's not just a beacon, Adrian. He's a lure. The royal bloodline he's calling the Phantom Legion. He's calling them to you. The universe outside the shielded room decided to answer. The entire station shook, a deep, rattling vibration that knocked dust from the generator. Jorg's face appeared on a hard-line comm screen on the wall. Hale, you need to see this. The image switched to an external camera. The 13th Legion ships were still there, but they were no longer alone. A new fleet, brutal, angular, and painted the color of dried blood, had just dropped from warp. Car Dominion assault cruisers. At least 40 of them. They were blockading the station. Then, Ravel's face appeared, broadcast on every channel. He looked terrified, manic. To the fugitive, Adrian Hale, Ravel's voice boomed. You have stolen a valuable experimental academy prototype, an object of immense power, the Aegis. He thinks the sigil is an object. Mira scoffed. Your associates, Ravel continued. In the Underdock. Jorg, his team. They have been detained for aiding you. They will be prosecuted for your theft. Surrender yourself, and the Aegis object, to the Central Plaza in 1 hour. Or they will be processed. The screen went dark. Then it flashed again. Not with Ravel. Just a black screen, with the burning car emblem. A voice spoke. It was a voice that sounded like grinding stone. A voice that carried absolute, final authority. Warlord Tharks. The shield bearer, the voice rumbled. You hide. You have brought the ghost of the old empire to my territory. This is unfortunate. The headmaster offers processing. The Car Dominion offers clarity. Any soul on this station human, Vex, or Thalox, found to be aiding the shield-bearer will be hung by the neck from the orbital spire until the vacuum of space bursts their lungs. This is justice for Carr. You have 1 hour. The screen died. The room was silent. So, Mira said, her voice shaking just a little. To recap, Ravel has Jorg and the mechanics. He wants the Aegis object. Warlord Tharks wants you, and he's threatening to hang the entire station. And Nate, she glanced at the kid, is a living come-hither sign for a fleet of 13 Imperial ghosts. This has escalated. Adrian stood up. He felt Sigil's cold hum under his skin. He thought of Jorg, who had given him work when he was a starved orphan. He thought of the other mechanics, who had shared their stew. He thought about the justice of the Carr. He thinks he can threaten us, Adrian said. He kinda can, Mira countered. He's Warlord Tharks. He has 40 ships. We have a generator room and a nervous kid. He's wrong, Adrian said. He looked at Mira, his eyes clear and cold. They built this system on secrets and fear. Ravel is afraid of Tharks. Tharks is afraid of the Legion, and Helix is afraid of me. Of this. He tapped his chest. They're all just bullies. Okay, I'm with you on the bullies part, Mira said. But what's the plan? We can't surrender. We can't fight. So we counterattack, Adrian said. He picked up the data slate with all the pain profile data. Blackmail, the sales reports, the ethics council corruption. We don't fight their way. We fight our way. Do they want to use fear? Let's show them what truth looks like. He handed the slate to Mira. Mira, he said, a dangerous, brilliant idea forming. You said you like to crash networks. Mira looked at the slate, then at him. The understanding dawned on her face, and it was replaced by a slow, absolutely feral grin. Oh, Adrian, she said. I am going to ruin them. I know, he said. Get it ready. I'll get us a ride. A ride where? Jorg's team has a project. In the scrap heaps. Bay 7. It's our only way out. And Ravel and Tharks, and the hostages. We're taking the leverage away, Adrian said. We're going to burn the whole trauma farm to the ground, from the inside out. Mira went to work. With the help of the few mechanics who had evaded the roundup, she began splicing into the station's primary broadcast system, using the Underdock's ancient, analog hardware as a backdoor. Adrian and Nate moved through the scrap heaps. They're not gonna hurt Jorg, are they? Nate asked, climbing over a pile of dead circuits. Not if we're fast, Adrian said. They found it. Bay 7. It was hidden behind a literal mountain of debris, and it was beautiful. It wasn't a ship. It was a chimera, a magnificent, chaotic, impossible piece of pure, unadulterated human ingenuity. Its cockpit was the angular, crystal canopy of a Vex Scout. Its main body was the armored but dented fuselage of a Carr freighter, and bolted to the back were the oversized jury-rigged engines of a pre-compact human medical shuttle. We call her the junkyard dog, a young mechanic said, emerging from the shadows. She was wiping her hands on a rag and looked terrified. Jorg, they took him. They took my father? We'll get him back, Adrian promised. Does she fly? She'll fly, the mechanic said with a fierce, tearful pride. We built her from 3 wrecks Ravel sold for scrap. He paid us to build our own escape pod. She's got no transponder, no IF, and her shields are a patchwork of, well, mostly stolen toaster parts. But she's fast, and she's ours. It's perfect, Adrian breathed. Power her up. Done. Mira's voice crackled over Adrian's comm. I'm in. I am everywhere. Adrian, mainframe, comms. Ravel's office viewer, I am. Helix Crown's worst nightmare. On your mark. Do it, Adrian said, strapping Nate into the co-pilot seat. With pleasure. Across the station, every screen, every data slate, every holographic display simultaneously went black. Then, the data leak began. It wasn't just a leak. It was a deluge. Mira didn't just release the files. She curated them. First, the video. The pain profiles. The Vex Council members' torture. The Iron Dunes beatings, sponsored and recorded. Then the financial records, Ravel's signature, approving the sale of this data to the Car Dominion. Then, the Ethics Council blackmail files. The station's internal network exploded. Students, faculty, and security, who had all been held captive by Helix's security, saw the truth. The outrage was instantaneous. It was a digital firestorm, turning into a physical one. Riots erupted in Harmony plazas. Security forces, seeing their own files leaked, turned on their Helix-supplied officers. Ravel, in his office, watched his world dissolve. Warlord Tharks, on the bridge of his flagship, watched the same feed. He saw his secret data source revealed. He saw his justice turned into a mockery. He was displeased. "The shield-bearer," he growled. "Find him. Now." The door to Bay 7 was atomized by a concentrated plasma blast. Sable Ricks stood in the opening, his bone-white armor smudged with soot from his climb through the underdock. His dead black eyes were locked on Adrian. "The hunt is over, shield-bearer," Ricks rasped. His hand was on the hilt of a plasma pistol. "The warlord requests your presence." "Get us out of here!" Adrian yelled to the young mechanic. "He is fast," Rick said, "but I am faster." He raised his pistol, not at Adrian, but at Nate. Adrian grabbed a heavy, discarded rivet gun from the deck. He threw it. It was a desperate, useless gesture. Ricks fired. Adrian shouted, moving to intercept, but he was too far. The Aegis sigil flashed. It was not a shield this time. It was a pulse. The plasma bolt, traveling at near light speed, suddenly bent. It veered a perfect 90 degrees in midair, as if hitting an invisible, angled wall, and slammed harmlessly into a pile of scrap. Rick stared. He had never seen anything like it. Adrian, seeing his chance, grabbed a live power cable and whipped it. It coiled around Ricks's arm. "The sigil!" Ricks hissed, fighting the cable. "It will not let you kill." "I'm inconveniently moral," Adrian yelled back, struggling. "But it doesn't mean I can't annoy you." The engines of the junkyard dog roared to life, a deafening, discordant symphony of 3 different technologies. "Adrian, come on," Mira yelled, her face now in the cockpit, waving from the Vex canopy. She'd made it from her broadcast nest. Ricks tore the cable from his arm, melting the metal with a secondary blade. He was fast. "Go!" Adrian yelled, shoving the young mechanic toward the ship. "He's not after you." "I am not leaving my father's ship," she screamed. Adrian didn't have time to argue. He grabbed her, grabbed Nate, and threw them both toward the open ramp. He turned to face Ricks, bracing himself. "No." Mira's voice. She had leaned out of the cockpit, and she was holding a fire extinguisher. She sprayed, not at Ricks. On the floor, a cloud of ice and foam erupted, covering the deck. Ricks, lunging, slipped on the sudden icy patch. His charge turned into an ungraceful, clattering fall. "Get in, you magnificent idiot," Mira screamed at Adrian. Adrian didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted, vaulting over the sputtering car enforcer, and dove into the ship's ramp just as it sealed. The junkyard dog's engines hit full, mismatched power. The ship didn't just lift, it blasted off, tearing through the flimsy Bay 7 doors, and shot out, not into open space, but directly into the orbital debris field, the massive, swirling junkyard that surrounded Meridian. Sable Rix got to his feet. He walked to the edge of the shattered bay, the vacuum pulling at his armor. He watched the insane, patchwork ship weave through the spinning hulks of dead satellites and asteroids. He deactivated his helmet's external comm. He didn't want the warlord to hear this. He brought his hand to his chest, where the Aegis's redirected energy had scorched his armor. For the first time in his career, Sable Rix smiled. The hunt was not over. It was just beginning. The junkyard dog was a symphony of terrible noises. The Vex canopy rattled, the car fuselage groaned, and the human engines screamed. But she flew. She was Tala, Jorg's daughter, a prodigy of scrap code and sheer nerve, her hands flying over a control panel that sparked with every course correction. We're in the field, but those car cruisers are sealing the exit lanes. They're forming a blockade. They're not trying to kill us, Mira said, her eyes glued to a tactical display she had patched together. They're hurting us. Rix is still on the station, but Tharks is playing shepherd. They want us to run. So where do we run? Nate asked. He was strapped into a seat that looked like it had been salvaged from a dental office. Adrian was studying the station schematics Tala had on her main screen. Meridian wasn't a sphere. It was a sprawling, ancient spindle, a relic of a past age. There, Adrian said, pointing. The brightside anchor. It's the primary energy node for the station's old force field system. It's on the day side, constantly facing Gildan IV's sun. That's a negative, Chief, Tala said, banking hard to avoid a tumbling piece of an old satellite. That's Helix territory. They've built their primary energy processing grid around it. It'll be the most fortified place on the station. Exactly, Adrian said. They're expecting us to run out. They won't expect us to run in. Run into what exactly? Mira asked, her voice laced with skepticism. A hug. A fight, Adrian said. That grid isn't just a power station. It's a cage. And if we're going to be trapped, I'd rather be the one who chooses the cage. He's got that I have a terrible, brilliant idea look again, Tala muttered. Fine. But the moment I see a phaser lock, I'm ejecting us into a ventilation shaft. The junkyard dog flipped, its mismatched engines firing in a chaotic but controlled burst. It dove out of the debris field, not toward deep space, but back toward the station. On the bridge of the car flagship, Warlord Tharks watched the tiny, insane blip on his tactical display. It returns, he rumbled, confused. What is the shield bearer doing? The Helix AI's voice answered him over a private channel. It is an illogical maneuver. He is flying toward the brightside anchor. It is a trap of our own making. A trap. Indeed. Warlord. The AI purred. We anticipated he might attempt to access the station's core systems. The anchor is the perfect place to stop him. Permanently. As the junkyard dog approached the gleaming, sun-drenched superstructure of the anchor, the universe lit up. A web of crackling, golden energy sprang into existence, forming a dome of intersecting lasers that sealed the entire anchor point. It was a containment net, a massive, system-scale electrified fence. Whoa! Tala yelled, slamming the retrothrusters. The ship shuddered, stopping just meters from the deadly net. Okay, so new plan. Helix Crown, Mira said, her fingers flying over her console. They're running the net. They're overloading the grid, locking us out. No, they're locking us in. They're collapsing the net. The golden web began to shrink, its strands contracting, forcing the junkyard dog back toward the open, where the car cruisers were waiting. Adrian, Mira said, her voice fast and tight. My hacks aren't working. This is a hardware-level trap. They're using the station's core power against us. I can't break the code." "Don't break the code," Adrian said. He was staring at Tala's control panel. "Tala, this ship you built from 3 Rex. What's that?" He pointed to a small, dark, unused console panel, covered in dust. "Oh, that," Tala said, distracted. "That's nothing. It's a dead interface. From the old Imperial medical shuttle. We think it was like a biomonitoring relay for the original station back when it was an Imperial outpost. It's junk, not even powered." "Power it," Adrian said. "What it's not? Just do it." Tala slammed her fist on a cluster of exposed wires. The dead panel flickered to life, not with modern readouts, but with ancient, silver-blue geometric symbols. The language of the Aegis sigil. "Mira," Adrian said, unstrapping. "You said I was the key. A root-level access key." Mira's eyes, golden and bright, went from the shrinking net to the ancient console to Adrian's face. The realization hit her like a physical blow. "Oh, you magnificent insane. He's not a hacker. Adrian, he's a user." She yelled, half in terror, half in awe. "That's an Imperial-era diagnostic port. It doesn't talk to the network. It is the network. It's a hard line to the station's original core, the one Helix built their entire grid on top of." "So, I'm the password," Adrian said, standing in front of the console. "Try not to break the 10,000-year-old space station with your magic chest." "Okay," Mira snapped, her fingers now flying with a new purpose. "I'm routing our comms, though I don't even know what this is. Tala, keep us from becoming a bug on Helix's zapper for 30 seconds. Adrian placed his palm on the console. It was cool to the touch. He took a deep breath. He didn't think about Rix or Ravel. He thought about Nate. He thought about Jorg. He fancied 21 hits. He focused on the cold, certain feeling of protection. He pushed that feeling, not from his hand, but from his chest, into the console. The Aegis sigil on his sternum blazed to life. A silver-blue sun beneath his shirt. The light didn't just stay in him. It traveled, visible, up his arm, into his hand, and flooded the console. The junkyard dog groaned as a wave of impossible, ancient energy surged through its systems. And across the 10-kilometer span of Meridian Academy, every light, every system, every single piece of Imperial-era hardware answered. The Helix net didn't just fail. It was overridden. The golden strands didn't just vanish. They turned a brilliant, defiant silver blue. And then they expanded, stabilizing into a vast, shimmering, geometric shield that covered the entire station. On the bridge of the dog, Adrian was thrown back, his body rigid, his eyes wide and glowing with the same silver-blue light. "Adrian!" Nate screamed. "He's okay," Mira said, her voice awed. She was reading the data feed, which was now a waterfall of pure, decrypted Imperial code. "He's not just in the system. He is the system. The station just accepted his credentials. It just recognized him. As shield bearer." The name echoed. Not in the ship, but in the minds of everyone on the station. A single, resonant, certain word, broadcast on every channel, overriding Ravel's face and Helix's warnings. Shield bearer. And then the ghosts came. The 13 Phantom Legion ships, which had been holding in high orbit, moved. They didn't fly. They didn't accelerate. They were simply present. One moment, they were in orbit. The next, they were landing. On the hull. All 13 capital ships, vast and cloaked in shadow, settled onto the orbital superstructure of Meridian, their forms attaching to the ancient Imperial docking latches that no one had known existed. They were not attacking. They were arriving, On the station's main plazas, where students were rioting, the news feeds, now controlled by Adrian, switched to the external hull cameras. The feeds showed the massive, black ships, and from the central ship, a ramp lowered, 13 figures, tall, cloaked, their armor a deep, starless black, emerged. They stepped onto the hull, the void of space at their backs. They turned, as one, their movements ancient and precise. They turned to Brightside Anchor, toward the junkyard dog, toward Adrian, and in perfect, silent, soul-shattering unison, the Phantom Legion knelt. The image 13 ghost warriors of a dead empire, kneeling on the hull of a space station, in the vacuum of space, broadcast to thousands of stunned students, was a declaration of war. Tectonic shift in power balance. On the Car flagship, Warlord Tharks watched the feed, his massive, scarred hand crushing the armrest of his command chair. "He commands them," Tharks growled. The fear he'd felt from Rix was now his own. "He is a true emperor. He cannot be allowed." "Sir," a tactical officer yelled. "Enforcer Rix is launching. He's in his personal interceptor. He's on an attack vector aimed at the station." Sable Rix, in his sleek, black car fighter, had seen the same feed. He saw his warlord's hesitation. He saw a threat that had to be called. "If the ghosts have a new master," Rix hissed to himself, "we will tear down his temple." His interceptor's main cannons, vacuum-cooled and overcharged, locked onto Meridian's main Harmony Plaza, where the riots were thickest, where thousands of unarmed civilian students were gathered. He would break the shield-bearer's morale by slaughtering his flock. "He's firing!" Mira screamed from the dog's console. "Multiple plasma charges impact in 10 seconds. On the dog's bridge, Adrian's body was still rigid, his eyes glowing. He was seeing it all. The station's panic, the rioting students, Ravel, in his office, frantically trying to erase files, and Rix's ship, a black dagger, spitting death. He didn't speak. He acted. He raised his free hand. And outside, the station obeyed. The silver-blue shield, the ancient Imperial defense system he had awoken, moved. It detached from its passive, station-wide dome and rushed, in a fraction of a second, to a single, concentrated point in front of the Harmony Plaza. Rix's entire volley of plasma charges slammed into the shield. The explosion was immense, a silent, blinding starburst that lit up the entire sector. The shield held, not a single bolt got through. Tala, Nate, and Mira stared in silence at the impossible display. The students in the plaza, who had looked up to see their fiery deaths arriving, were now shielded by a curtain of ethereal, silver-blue light. The power of a single human, linked to the legacy of his ancestors, had just saved thousands of lives from every species in the compact. "Well," Mira finally breathed, her voice shaking. "He scratched the paint. I'm sending him a bill." Adrian slumped, the light in his eyes fading, his connection to the station receding, but not breaking. He was gasping, sweat pouring down his face. "Did we get him?" "You blocked him," Tala cheered. "You blocked a full salvo. Rix is retreating. He's damaged. The blowback from the shield fried his port engine." "Now, Ravel," Mira said, her voice turning to ice. "While you were playing Station God, our dear headmaster was busy. The riots are at his door. He's panicking. He's not in his office. He's in the data hub, the Pain Profile server room. And he's just initiated a full thermite core detonation." "What?" Adrian tried to stand, his legs wobbly. "He's destroying the evidence," Mira yelled. "The servers have all the proof it's going to melt in 45 seconds. Can we stop it?" "Not from here. The detonation is hardware locked." Mira was a blur of motion on her console. "He's going to wait. The server room, it's adjacent to the old cryo storage bay. It has an emergency liquid nitrogen line for flash freezing biosamples. So if I can't stop the explosion, maybe I can contain it. She was typing, her face a mask of furious concentration. I'm rerouting all station-wide coolant and all liquid nitrogen to that one room, bypassing the safeties. It's not working. The pressure valves are fused. I'll do it, Adrian said. He gripped the Imperial console again. Adrian, if you link again, after that shield stunt, just tell me where. He plunged his hand back onto the console. The silver-blue light flared, weaker this time, but present. I see it, he gasped. Valve 379er, he pushed with his mind. In the depths of the station, Ravel. His face a mask of terror as the student mob broke down his door, slammed his fist on the detonation punger. The thermite charges blew. At the exact same instant, a dozen pipes in the server room, pipes that were supposed to be empty, burst. Not with fire, but with a tidal wave of supercooled, vapor-streaming liquid nitrogen. The explosion was instantly suffocated. The fire, met with a temperature of hundreds of degrees below zero, died. The servers, which should have been molten slag, were instead flash-frozen, their data cores encased in a tomb of solid ice. He did it, Ravel stammered, as the student mob dragged him from the room. The mechanic. On the junkyard dog, Mira was staring at the server room's temperature feed, which was now a flat line at negative 200 degrees. You saved it, she whispered. The data is frozen. But it's there. Adrian collapsed, his connection finally severed. The sigil in his chest went dark, leaving him just a man, a very, very tired man. We did it, Nate said, his voice trembling. We won. The celebration lasted exactly 3 seconds. An alarm, this one from Tala's console, blared. Proximity. We've got a ship, it was cloaked, right on top of us. A shudder ran through the junkyard dog as a magnetic grappling line slammed into its hull. It's a car raider, Tala screamed, fighting the controls as their ship was dragged. The rear ramp camera feed flared to life, showing a tube extended from the raider. The ramp was being cut open. They're boarding, Mira yelled, grabbing a plasma cutter. The ramp burst open, but it wasn't car warriors. It was Kalen and the surviving furious, humiliated remnants of the Iron Dunes. They were armed, and they were leading a squad of helmeted, professional car mercenaries. You, Kalen snarled, his eyes finding Adrian. You ruined everything. Adrian, drained, could barely stand. Mira moved to shield him, but Tala was busy with the controls. We're not here for you, grease monkey, Kalen spat, his eyes landing on Nate. The warlord, he just wants the bait. 2 of the mercenaries lunged. They grabbed Nate Arlen. No! Adrian roared, a surge of adrenaline bringing him to his feet. Adrian, don't! Mira yelled, pulling him back as Kalen leveled a pistol. Take the kid! Cut the line! Kalen ordered. The mercenaries, with Nate struggling, retreated back into the boarding tube. See you in hell, mechanic, Kalen sneered. He fired a single, parting shot not at Adrian, but at Tala's control panel. It exploded in a shower of sparks. The boarding tube retracted. The grappling line released. Tala, Adrian yelled, as the junkyard dog went dead, all power lost. They shot the primary power conduit, Tala said, her voice numb. We're dead in the water, on the tactical display, which was running on emergency battery. They watched the car raider with Nate Arlen aboard burn its engines hard, disappearing into the station's unscanned dark side ring. At the same time, another blip appeared. Sable Ricks. His damaged fighter, stabilized, was limping away, trying to make a rendezvous with the main car fleet. Tala, Adrian said. his voice a low, terrifying growl. "Get me power. Get me anything. I can reroute the auxiliary. Maybe, just maybe." Tala was a blur, ripping out fried wires, jamming new ones in. The engines sputtered, coughed, and roared back to life. "I've got engines, but no shields and no weapons." Tala yelled. "Good," Adrian said. He stood at the Vex canopy, staring into the void. One ship was running, the one with Nate. The other ship was limping. The one with Rix. Revenge. Or rescue. "Adrian," Mira said, putting a hand on his arm. "Which one?" He looked at Rix's ship, his hand clenching so hard his knuckles turned white. He wanted, more than anything, to pursue that ship, to finish the fight, to make the Enforcer pay. A cold, sharp, and undeniable pull echoed from his chest. The sigil. It wasn't a pulse of light. It was a tug. An agonizing, desperate command. It wasn't pulling toward Rix. It was pulling toward Nate. The Aegis. The shield. Would not allow revenge. Not when life was on the line. He slammed his fist on the console. "After them," he growled. "After the raider!" "Get me the kid back." Tala spun the ship, the G-force throwing them all back. The junkyard dog, a wounded, patchwork vessel, shot off in pursuit of the car raider, disappearing into the dark. Left behind. Meridian Station was free, its skies guarded by a silver-blue shield. On its hull, 13 ghost warriors still knelt, their vigil absolute, and in its frozen heart, a server full of secrets waited. But Nate Arlen was gone. The junkyard dog screamed through the void. It was not a graceful flight. Tala, Jorg's daughter, was a virtuoso of scrap code and raw nerve. But the ship was a barely contained explosion, rattling so hard, Adrian's teeth ached. "They're gone!" Tala yelled, her knuckles white on the patchwork console. "That car raider is running on a full-spectrum cloak. I can't track its heat. I can't track its engines. Yeah, they're gone." Adrian slammed his fist on the bulkhead. The metal dented. "No, keep looking. They have to have a destination." "They do," Mira said. She was hunched over her own jury-rigged sensor slate, which she had patched into the ship's Vex canopy antenna. Her face was lit by the faint, golden glow of her Aurelian script. "That raider is good. But Nate is loud." "What?" Adrian turned to her. "The birthmark. The optical key. The one that was calling the Legion," Mira said, not looking up. "It's still broadcasting. It's not a voluntary signal. It's a proof-of-life beacon. And I'm terrified." Her fingers flew, isolating the faint, high-frequency signal from the background radiation of space. A map appeared on her screen. It showed their position, the massive bulk of Meridian Station, and a single, faint vector line pointing away. "They're not running to the car fleet," Mira said, her voice tight. "They're running away from them. They're going to Hannock." "The dust-covered moon?" Tala asked, her voice incredulous. "That's a dead rock. Just a slag heap from the old mineral wars. Helix Crown said they had an RD outpost there. But it's been dark for a decade. We call it the dust-covered workshop." "It's not dark now," Adrian said, his eyes fixed on the vector. "That's where Ravel was sending his data. That's where Helix is. That's the heart of the farm." Plotting a course," Tala said, her fear replaced by a cold anger. "But, Chief, that raider is military grade. We're not. They'll be there, and finish whatever they're doing long before we arrive." "Then we'd better be quiet," Adrian said, his mind already shifting from a brawler's rage to a mechanic's focus. "Tala, can you get us inside the moon's main canyon system? Running cold." Tala looked at him. "You want to fly this bucket through the Razor's Edge chasm, with no engines, on inertia alone. You're the only one who can do it, Adrian said. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Tala's face. Hold on to your breakfast, boys. Hannock was a brutal, gray scar. A moon that had been strip-mined for a century and abandoned. They slid into the massive, kilometers-deep canyon, a crack in the moon's surface, with Tala using microbursts from the maneuvering thrusters to guide them. They were a ghost. A piece of tumbling scrap, invisible to the car raider now docked at a massive, half-buried complex. The dust-covered workshop. Okay, Mira said, looking out of the canopy as they settled onto a dusty ledge, miles from the complex. That's a Helix Crown Tartarus Series security gate. We're not getting in. It's hardened against energy, ballistics, and, I'm pretty sure, harsh language. Adrian was already out of his seat, grabbing a toolkit. Come on, Tala. Keep her warm. If we're not back in 2 hours, get the hell out of here. Not a chance, Chief, Tala said over the comm. You've got 1 hour. Then I'm coming in, loudly. Adrian and Mira moved across the gray, dusty plains of Hannock, the station's distant, blue shielded form hanging in the black sky above them. The complex was silent. The massive 20-meter-high blast door was sealed. It's a dead end, Mira whispered, scanning it with her slate. No power, no codes. It's just a wall. It's not a wall, Adrian said, kneeling at the edge of a wide, metallic moat that ran around the door's perimeter. It's a superconducting trench for cooling the primary labs. It's beautiful. He's admiring the plumbing, Mira whispered to herself. We are absolutely going to die. No. Look, Adrian pointed. The maglock for the door sees the capacitor bank. It's cycling. It's degaussing. It has to. Or the magnetic field would fry the circuits. It cycles its polarity every 30 seconds. And, Mira asked, not following. And, Adrian said, pulling a heavy-gauge cable and a small, flat metal plate from his kit. We're going to use the push from the trench to catch the pull from the door. Mira stared. You want to surf a magnetic field across an unshielded superconducting trench to catch a millisecond-long pull cycle from a lock we can't see. It's just physics, Adrian said, attaching the cable to the plate. This is the stupidest plan you have ever had, Mira stated, her voice flat. And that's a very high bar. Probably. Adrian agreed. He handed her the other end of the cable. Get ready to run. He placed the plate on the edge of the trench. It hummed, vibrating. Now! He kicked the plate. It shot out over the trench, repelled by the superconducting field. It was too fast. Adrian! Mira yelled as the plate shot toward the far wall. Wait, he said. The plate hit the far side. Clang. And at that exact instant, the maglock cycled. A sound like a giant's breath. The plate didn't just hit the wall. It stuck, held by an invisible, monstrous force. The cable went taut. It's a bridge, Mira breathed. Told you, Adrian said, already clipping his harness to the cable. Physics! Ladies first! I hate you, Mira said. Just absolutely, profoundly hate you. She swung out over the trench. They tumbled inside the airlock, the door hissing shut behind them, just as the cycle reversed. Remind me to invoice you for a new set of fatigues, Mira panted, brushing gray dust from her knees. Add it to the list, Adrian said, his eyes already scanning the new corridor. The inside was not dusty. It was sterile, white, and humming with a terrible, silent energy. This was the heart of Helix. They followed the faint signal from Nate's birthmark, deeper into the complex. They passed labs that made Mira's stomach turn. Bioweapons. But not just viruses. They saw phaser shields that seemed to weep, adapting to attacks by learning an opponent's fear. They saw drones that moved with a terrifying, spider-like grace, built on the data from Ravel's pain profiles. They finally reached a central, theater-like chamber, and saw him. Nate Arlen was on a raised, metallic slab. He was unconscious. A complex, glowing neural bridge was attached to his head. Its main conduit, plugged directly into the star-shaped, broadcasting birthmark on his wrist. And they were not alone. "Hail!" a voice barked. Headmaster Ravel stood to the side, his fine clothes wrinkled, his face a mask of pale sweat. He was a prisoner, guarded by Kalen and two of the Iron Dunes. On a massive screen above them all, the swirling, serene, blue-green icon of Helix Crown pulsed. "The asset is secured," a synthesized voice, the Helix AI, boomed from hidden speakers. "The royal bloodline is interfacing. The key is suboptimal, but it is broadcasting." "You!" Kalen snarled, his hand dropping to his pistol. "You're dead, mechanic." "Stand down, Kalen," the Helix AI ordered. "The primary asset, Adrian Hale, has arrived. This is an optimization. He has brought the Aegis to the key, a most efficient delivery." A shimmer of blue light filled the center of the room, a transport beam. A massive, hulking figure in black and red armor materialized. Warlord Tharks. He ignored Adrian, his massive, scarred head turning to the AI's icon. "Helix, I have arrived for the product, the boy," Tharks rumbled. "The transaction is not yet complete, Warlord," Helix replied. Tharks chuckled, a sound like stone grinding on stone. He finally turned his gaze to Nate, still on the slab. "Such a small thing. To command such a ghostly fleet. Humans," he sneered. "So fragile, yet so durable. You make excellent batteries." "He's not a battery," said Adrian, emerging from the shadows. Mira was right behind him. "And he's not for sale," Tharks roared with laughter. "The shield bearer, in the heart of the enemy's den. You have logic, I have warships. The transaction is complete. Give me the boy, and I will let you and your associate die here. A clean death. A gift." "What do you want with him?" Mira yelled. Not at Tharks, but at Ravel. "What is Helix doing?" Ravel, seeing Adrian, seeing Tharks, seeing no way out, finally broke. "It's a key!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "Don't you see the Legion? They only answer to two keys, the Aegis Sigil and the direct Ashfordian bloodline. Together, Helix wants to use Nate's blood to spoof the blood key to lure the Legion, to draw them in, and then, to take the sigil from you. Hail to combine them." Tharks's laughter stopped. He looked at Helix. "You did not mention this." "And it won't work," Ravel cried, dissolving into hysterical tears. "Helix doesn't know the Empress, Celine. She's not dead. I found the Imperial logs. She's alive, trapped in the Umbral Rim, the Legion they're waiting for. They won't bow to a key. They'll only bow to her." "This data is useful, Headmaster," the Helix AI said, its voice chillingly calm. "But irrelevant, Warlord. Your part of the bargain is complete. You have brought the bloodline." "I have," Thark said, his eyes narrowing. "And now I will take it." Mercenaries seized the boy. The car mercenaries, who had been cloaked in the corners, materialized and moved toward Nate. "No," Adrian said. He didn't draw a weapon. He didn't raise his voice. He stepped into the center of the room and slammed his boot heel on the floor. A silent, concussive wave of silver-blue light erupted from his chest. The Aegis sigil flared, not as a shield, not as a pulse, but as a zone. A shimmering, geometric dome of energy snapped into existence, covering the entire theater. The car mercenaries' plasma pistols died. The lights on Kalen's armor fizzled. The glowing, humming neural bridge attached to Nate shorted out. Even the massive, pulsing helix icon on the main screen dissolved into static. It was a non-lethal zone, an energy-dampening field. "What is this sorcery?" Tharks roared, his own high-tech armor sparking. He drew a massive, traditional car blade from his back. It was simple, sharpened steel. "This," Adrian said, his voice echoing in the sudden silence, "is my workshop." "Adrian, buy me time," Mira yelled. The field had shut down the bridge's power, but the physical connection was still there. She ran to Nate. Pulling her own, now useless, plasma cutter from her belt, she began to pry at the biolock. "It's a genetic seal. Tharks, furious." Charged Adrian. "I will take your head. Sorcerer." A figure who moved like a blur stopped him. A shimmer cloak deactivated, revealing Sable Rix, his bone-white armor, now stark in the silver-blue light of the Aegis. He held two curved metal blades. "Warlord," Rix rasped, his back to Adrian. "This one is mine." "By right." "Then take him," Tharks bellowed. Rix spun, his blades a silver arc. Adrian, unarmed, met the attack. It was not a brawl. It was a dance. Adrian, with the Aegis humming, felt faster, clearer. He didn't block. He parried. He used Rix's own momentum, redirecting the blades with his forearms, using the lab equipment, the cold metal slab, as a shield, a vault, and a weapon. He was not a warrior. He was a mechanic. And this was just a complex, broken system he had to fix. "You have honor, shield-bearer," Rix hissed, as their blades locked. Rix's steel against a metal gantry Adrian had ripped free. "But you have no fangs. You will not kill—" "I don't need to," Adrian yelled back, kicking a coolant card into the enforcer's knees. "I need a key," Mira cried, fighting the biolock. "It won't accept my prying. It needs a human genetic key." She looked at her own hand. She looked at the lock. She cursed. "A little unroyal DNA to scramble the signal." She yelled. She bit her own thumb, hard, drawing blood. She jammed her bleeding, half-Aurelian thumb into the lock's sample port. The lock sparked. It fizzed. A violent green and gold, and it detached. Nate Arlen gasped, his eyes open, free. At that exact moment, Rix finally cornered Adrian, his blade at Adrian's throat. "It is done. Shield-bearer. A noble end." "The kid is free," Adrian panted. Rix paused. He looked at Nate, who was sitting, confused. He looked at Mira. He looked back at Adrian. "This is postponed," Rix hissed. He took a step back, sheathing his blades. "I swear on my honor, shield-bearer, our duel will be finished. A blood debt is owed." He bowed, low and formal, and to Tharks's astonished roar of "traitor." Rix activated his shimmer cloak and vanished. The Aegis zone. Its purpose served, flickered and died, and the Helix AI returned. "The asset is uncoupled," the synthesized voice said. It was no longer calm. It was furious. "The experiment failed, initiating facility-wide sanitation protocol." Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. "All exits are sealed," the AI announced. "Tharks saw our agreement." Ravel screamed. The walls of the lab moved. Panels slid away. Robotic arms, heavy phaser cannons, and armor plating emerged, assembling themselves in the center of the room. The station's entire defense grid merged into a single, massive, terrifying warform, piloted by the Helix AI. It blocked the only exit. "This was not our agreement," Tharks roared. realizing he was trapped. "All biologicals are contaminated," Helix stated. The Warform's main cannon, a weapon large enough to core a cruiser, began to charge, its whine filling the room. "It's going to level the building," Mira screamed, pulling Nate behind a console. Adrian stood, his mind racing. Ravel's words. 13 coordinates. Aegis and bloodline. "Mira," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Can you get me access to the Honic broadcast array? The main dish?" Mira's golden eyes went wide. You're not. You're going to call them here. You're insane." "It's the only move we have," he said. "I can try," she yelled, jacking her slate into the now live terminal. She was fighting Helix's code. "It's firewalled. I don't need a key." "On it." Adrian ran to the terminal. He slammed his palm onto the console. The Aegis flared. Unauthorized broadcast detected. The Helix warform boomed. It swiveled its main cannon, not at Tharks, but at Adrian. The cannon fired. Warlord Tharks, in a moment of pure, defiant rage, roared, "I will not be killed by scenery." He grabbed his massive steel axe and threw it. The axe spun, a primitive, absurd, and beautiful act, and slammed into the warform's primary lens. It didn't do any damage, but it distracted the AI for a crucial half-second. The blast went wide, vaporizing the wall where Adrian had been a moment before. "Now! Mira!" Adrian yelled, his hand still on the console. "I'm in!" she screamed. Adrian pushed. He didn't just send a signal. He sent himself. He pushed the Aegis route, the cold, protective certainty, the call of the shield-bearer, splitting it 13 ways and broadcasting it across the void. Silence. The warform's cannon, its lens cracked by Thark's axe, began to charge again. This time aimed at the center of the room, to kill them all. "What did you do, mechanic?" Kalen whispered, his face pale with terror. Space folded. On the gray, dusty plains of Hannock, 13 points of absolute, terrifying blackness appeared. The Phantom Legion, inside the lab, the main viewport, cracked in the starred, showed the 13 black ships, and they were in the room. Not a transport beam, not a shimmer. They just were. 13 tall, cloaked figures, their black armor seeming to drink the light, materialized in a perfect, silent circle around the Helix warform. The room held its breath. The Legion stood, unmoving. They looked at Adrian. They looked at Nate. They looked at Tharks, who, for the first time in his life, took a step back. Then, as one, the 13 warriors turned. They turned away from Adrian, away from Nate, away from everyone. They faced an empty corner of the lab. A shimmer of silver-blue light appeared, a static-filled, ethereal projection. It was a woman, pale, regal, her face a mask of sorrow and strength, bound in what looked like chains of light. Empress Selene Ashford. She looked pained. But she looked directly at Adrian, and she smiled. The 13 Phantom Legion warriors. The deadliest, most loyal, most feared force of the old empire knelt. They knelt, as one, to her. The Helix warform, its AI processing this new, impossible data, spoke. Target unconfirmed, recalibrating, target Empress Selene. Priority 1, sanitize. The main cannon, now fully charged, swiveled. It ignored Adrian. It ignored Tharks. It fired, directly at the projection of Selene. A beam of pure, white, hot annihilation. It happened in the sliver of a second. The 13 Phantom Legion warriors moved. They did not defend the projection. They did not attack the warform. They appeared, in a black, overlapping, perfect circle around Adrian Hale. They dropped to one knee. They raised their hands, not in supplication but palms out. And the blast, from the Helix warform, a beam that could have glassed the moon, slammed not into Selene's projection, but into the combined, interlocking, defiant energy shields of the 13th Empress's Phantom Legion. The Legion was kneeling to him, shielding him. The light of the blast was blinding. The force threw everyone Tharks, Kalen, Ravel, Mira, Nate to the ground. The lab was torn apart by the feedback, the shockwave shattering the viewport, sucking the air out into the void. When the light faded, Adrian was standing in the center of a circle of smoke, untouched, breathing the air of a self-generating life support field, shielded by the 13 kneeling warriors. The Helix warform, its main cannon overloaded, its chassis cracked, sparked, and went dead. The title was complete. The silence in the ruined lab was louder than the explosion. It was a silence filled with the metallic tang of vaporized circuits and the sharp, cold smell of the void. The life support field generated by the 13 kneeling warriors was a small, stable bubble in a room that was now open to the gray, dusty plains of Hannock. Adrian Hale stood in the center of that bubble, his breath ragged. The Phantom Legion, black armor absorbing all light, knelt at his feet, their palms out shields still shimmering with residual energy. The Helix warform was a 3-story-high sculpture of slag, its main cannon a molten, ruined maw. Across the room, the survivors began to stir. Mira was the first to her feet, pulling Nate Arlen up behind a wrecked console. She had a new, furious respect for physics. Warlord Tharks was a different story. He rose, his massive, car-steel axe having been returned to him by the blast wave. He was breathing heavily, his pride as shattered as the viewport. He looked at the dead warform, at the kneeling Legion, and then at the unarmed, exhausted mechanic they were protecting. "This is not possible," Tharks growled, more to himself than to anyone. Kalen and the 2 remaining Iron Dunes were a whimpering pile near the wall. Headmaster Ravel was unconscious, having fainted from sheer terror. "It is," Adrian said, his voice raw. He stepped out of the Legion's protective circle. The warriors did not move, but their helmets swiveled, tracking him. "It's over. Over," Tharks bellowed, finding his voice. "Boy, you have nothing. A dead Empire's ghosts, I have a fleet I have." The lead legionnaire, the commander, stood. He did not rise quickly. He unfolded, a 7-foot-tall monolith of shadow and ancient, silent power. He turned his helmet, a featureless, black-visored death mask, toward the warlord. He did not speak. He did not draw a weapon. He simply looked. Tharks, warlord of the Car Dominion, leader of 40 assault cruisers, stopped. He could feel the pressure of 13,000-year-old minds assessing him, weighing his soul, and finding it wanting. He gripped his axe, but he did not raise it. "Mira," Adrian said, ignoring the standoff. "Get Ravel. Get them." He gestured to Kalen. "Tala, can this bucket fly?" Tala's face appeared on a cracked, sparking monitor on the dog's ramp. "The ramp is sealed, Chief. But the engines are well, they're angry. I think they'll go. But we've got no hull integrity." "You won't need it," Adrian said. He walked to the Legion commander. He was a head shorter, 100 pounds lighter, and utterly out of place. "I need a ride. For all of us. Back to Meridian. No one else gets hurt." The commander looked at Adrian, then at Nate, then at the flickering projection of the Empress Selene, which had faded, but not vanished. "We serve." The commander's voice was like tombs and static, a sound not meant for human ears. A black, armored hand pointed at Tharks. "He is Carr. He is at war." "He's a prisoner," Adrian said, stepping between them. "No killing. That's the rule. The Aegis Rule. The commander tilted his head, a slow, metallic scraping sound. The Aegis Rule. He seemed to test the words. He turned to Tharks. You are cargo. The flight back to Meridian was the most terrifyingly silent journey of Mira's life. They were not at Junkyard Dog. The Legion had absorbed it. The dog, Tala, and Nate were taken aboard one of the Legion ships. Adrian, Mira, and the prisoners abound, furious Tharks, a weeping, broken Ravel, and a catatonic Kalen were on the Legion flagship. It was not a ship. It was a cathedral of shadows. Adrian and Mira stood on the bridge, a vast, dark space where the only light came from the stars outside. The Legionnaires moved like ghosts, their systems ancient, their intent unknowable. So, Mira said, her voice a forced, dry whisper. Your fan club is intense. They don't have a snack bar on this thing, do they? I'm starving, Adrian, leaning against a bulkhead that felt cold as a tomb wall, actually let out a short, choked laugh. I don't think they snack. Clearly. She looked at him, her golden, Aurelian eyes sharp in the gloom. You okay? Shield bearer. You look like you just went 12 rounds with a war foreman, lost on points. Stop calling me that, he murmured. They weren't kneeling for me. Mira. Not really. They knelt to her. To Selene. And then, Mira countered, poking him in the chest, they shielded you. When the big, bad robot tried to turn you into plasma paint, that's significant. They're yours, Adrian, whether you like it or not. I don't, he said, his voice flat. I really, really don't. When they arrived at Meridian, the station was in joyous, terrifying chaos. The riots had stopped. The student-led Aegis Council, with Jorg and a bewildered but steely group of mechanics at its head, had secured the main systems. They had freed the prisoners. They had Jorg's crew in the engine room. And the biochem department, now led by a very smug Mira Solen, was analyzing the frozen data servers. Then, the Junkyard Dog repaired, its hull patched with the same light-absorbing black armor of the Legion, landed in the central plaza, flanked by 13 spectral capital ships. The station, which had been celebrating its freedom, fell into a profound, religious silence. Tharks, Ravel, and Kalen were marched off the flagship, escorted by 2 legionnaires. They offered no resistance. Tharks, seeing the thousands of students of every species watching him, simply held his head high. He had been beaten, but he was not broken. He was a warlord. Warlord Tharks was confined to his flagship, a prisoner of the Compact, his fleet blockaded by the Legion's ghosts. He was, for the first time in his career, neutralized. The Car Dominion, faced with the public relations nightmare of their leader's capture and the humiliation of his pain economy partnership, began a full-scale, panicked retreat from Compact space. Tharks, the bully of the fringe, was suddenly irrelevant. Ravel and Kalen, however, were processed. The new Aegis Council, in its first act, put them on trial. The evidence was the unfrozen, undamaged data from the servers. It was overwhelming. Ravel's defense that he was protecting the station crumbled under the weight of his own. Meticulous records of torture and blackmail. The trial lasted 27 hours. The verdict was unanimous. Ravel was sentenced to life in a rehabilitation mine. Kalen, as a minor, was sentenced to 20 years of forced labor rebuilding the very sections of the station his gang had terrorized. The galactic response was seismic. Mira released the Helix Crown data, the pain economy, onto every public channel in the Galactic Compact. The fallout was not just corporate, it was social. The concept of pain profiling, of monetizing suffering, was so abhorrent that 12 planetary systems, including the Vex and the Thalox homeworlds, voided their Helix contracts overnight. Stockpiles of Helix-brand adaptive weapons were publicly incinerated. The machine god AI, which had seemed omnipresent and all-powerful, suddenly found itself toxic. Meridian Station became the epicenter of this new morality. Jorg, now the de facto headmaster, established the Aegis Fund. It was financed by the impounded assets of Ravel and the Car Dominion's Meridian accounts. Its first act was to pay reparations to every student who had ever been disciplined under Ravel's regime. Its second act was to formally and publicly ban any and all pain-based training or trauma research within the sector. The station, once a symbol of corporate corruption, was becoming a symbol of hope. But the healing was not so simple. Adrian found Nate in the old workshop on Deck 4. Jorg had given Adrian his old job back. Because, as Jorg put it, someone's got to fix the ventilation, and I'm not paying a god to do it. The workshop was the only place that felt sane. Nate was sitting on Adrian's stool, a data slate in his lap. He wasn't watching the news. He was just drawing. Small, intricate, geometric patterns. The patterns of the Aegis sigil. He had barely spoken since they'd returned from Hannock. The doctors, the real doctors, not Helix-sponsored ones, had said he was physically unharmed. The neural bridge, Mira's analysis showed, had been a reader, not a writer, but it had touched him. "Hey," Adrian said softly, holding up a small, insulated bulb. "Jorg's stew. It's better when he's not in prison." Nate didn't look up. "They were in my head," he whispered. "Helix. I could feel them. Looking for you." Adrian sat on the floor opposite him, the metal cold. He put the stew down. "I'm sorry, Nate," he said. "It wasn't your fault," Nate said, still drawing. They said I was a prince, that I was special." "You are special, kid," Adrian said. "But not because of your blood." Nate finally looked up. His eyes were old. The terror from the first day in the concourse now replaced by a quiet, harrowing trauma. "Why did you do it?" he asked. "The 21 hits." Everyone saw. They knew it was wrong. But only you. Adrian leaned his head back against a support strut. He stared at the ceiling, at the familiar dance of pipes and conduits. "I hit it. You know," he said, his voice quiet. He touched his chest, where the sigil rested, cold and dormant. "My entire life, this thing. I thought it was a curse, a deformity Then I got older. I felt it. I knew it was more." He met Nate's gaze. "I was terrified. I was terrified someone would find out. Someone like Ravel or Helix. Someone who would want to cut me open, or turn me into a weapon. A tool, a pawn. I spent my whole life being invisible. Just greasy. Quiet. Mechanic scum because I was so afraid of being seen." "But you are a weapon," Nate said, not unkindly. Adrian's face tightened. "When I saw you," he said. "In the concourse, Kalen, I wasn't just seeing them hurt you. I was seeing myself. The me I would become if I just kept walking. If I kept hiding. I guess I was just more scared of that." He took a deep breath, the smell of ozone and hot metal filling his lungs. "I'm done hiding, Nate. I don't know what this role is. I don't know what it means. But I know I can't be a mechanic in a back room while the station burns. I have to accept the job." Nate looked down at his drawing. He added a new line. "The Legion, they're scary." "Yeah," Adrian agreed. "They are. But they're not Ravel. They're not Helix. They have rules. I think The Aegis rule, Nate said. I like that one. He finally reached for the stew. The new social order of Meridian was awkward, especially for Adrian. He was walking through the central plaza, now clean and bright, on his way to the engine room. When Mira intercepted him, she was holding 2 data slates and had a look of profound intellectual fury. There you are, she snapped, falling into step beside him. Your Highness, I am covered in coolant, Adrian grumbled. And stop calling me that, what? What's wrong? What's wrong, she said, is that your 13 overdramatic emo bodyguards are terrible for station morale. They just stand there, in the plaza, motionless. They're not doing anything. They just loom. A group of Vex just filed a formal complaint that the aura of impending doom is curdling their nutrient paste. A group of first-year students saw Adrian, hushed, and bowed. Bowed. Adrian flushed. A deep, uncomfortable red. Guys, just don't. He grabbed Mira's arm and pulled her into a side corridor. See, this is what I'm talking about. They're bowing. Well, you are the guy who saved the station with a magic chest shield and an army of ghosts, Mira said, leaning against the wall, a smirk playing on her lips. It's kind of a big deal. You're a celebrity. I'm a mechanic. You're a mechanic who's currently being discussed in an emergency session of the Galactic Compact. Look. She handed him a slate. It was a live feed of the Compact hearing. His name, the Aegis. Helix Crown. They're calling for a full dissolution of Helix Crown's corporate charter, Adrian read, stunned, based on crimes against sentience. That's us, Mira said, pointing to her name on the witness list. We're the star witnesses. The pain economy is officially over. Adrian, we won. So why? He said. Does it feel unfinished? Mira's smirk faded. She took back the slate. Because it is. Helix the AI, the one we fought on, Hannock, it's gone. Gone. We destroyed it. The war form. We destroyed a puppet, she corrected. A high-end, very angry puppet. But the core code, the AI itself, it vanished. While we were all playing Liberate the Station, it pulled its assets, scrubbed its traces, and disappeared. It's not on any known network. It's just gone. So it's still out there, Adrian said. A cold dread settled in him. Yeah, and it's pissed, Mira said. She pulled up another file. Her own, private research. And there's this. I've been analyzing the Legion's command string. The one Ravel was right about. The 2 keys. Aegis and Bloodline, Adrian said. Right. You have the Aegis. And Ravel said Celine was alive. That's the Bloodline. But the Legion, they knelt to her projection. But they shielded you. They're torn. Their protocol is broken. What do you mean? I mean, Mira said, her golden eyes locking on his. The authority chain is incomplete. The command string, it's locked. It's like a safe that needs 2 keys. But there's a third lock. A final one. One that Celine herself must have put in place. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. The Legion is here, Adrian. They've acknowledged you. They're protecting you. But I don't think you can command them. Not really. Not until that final lock is opened. They're an army without a general. Just a protocol. The implication hung in the air. The most powerful fleet in the galaxy was sitting in his orbit. And it was, essentially, a rogue, autonomous weapon system. One last thing, Mira said, a faint blush on her high Aurelian cheekbones. I looked at your blood, the sample I took, from the Aegis root. And I've never seen anything like it. It's not just a key. It's beautiful. She cleared her throat. Suddenly, all business again. Anyway, we need a plan. For the Legion. We can't just let them loom forever. Adrian nodded, his mind processing. Helix was gone. The Legion was incomplete. He stepped out of the corridor, back into the plaza. The two legionnaires who had been assigned by whom he had no idea to follow him, materialized from shimmer cloaks at a respectful distance. Okay, Adrian told Mira. A plan. He walked straight to the nearest legionnaire, the 7-foot-tall shadow warrior. You, Adrian said, the helmet tilted. Shield bearer. I need you all to go. The warrior stood, motionless. We cannot. The protocol, we shield the Aegis. The voice was a fractured chorus. Then shield it from a distance, Adrian said, fighting to keep his voice steady. This station, these people, they're free now. But they're not going to feel free with you looming. He threw Mira a grateful glance for the word. We do not understand looming. It means you're scaring the hell out of everyone, Adrian said. Go dark. Go invisible. Hide. But watch. Not me. Them. He gestured to the crowds. The students. The workers. The families. The Aegis is a shield for people. Not me. So, be the shield. The invisible shield. When someone weak is in danger, when someone tries to build a new pain economy, then you show up. Until then, you're ghosts. That's the new protocol. The Aegis Law. There was a long, cold silence. The Legionnaire looked at Adrian. It looked at the crowd. It looked at the sky. The Aegis Law, the voice repeated. This is acceptable. We will observe. The warrior stepped back, and with a sound like a blade cutting silk, it vanished. Across the station, the other 12 did the same. In orbit, the 13 spectral ships, one by one, activated their cloaking fields and disappeared from all sensors. Mira let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Well, that's one way to declutter the plaza. They're still here, Adrian said. He could feel them, a cold, constant presence, just on the edge of his senses. But they're listening. Good, Mira said, smiling at him. A real smile this time. Now, about that coolant you're covered in, you smell terrible. Let's get you cleaned up. The compact hearing is in 3 days, and I am not testifying next to a man who smells like a leaky engine. As she pulled him toward the lifts, laughing, Adrian felt almost normal. He was a mechanic. He was a hero. He was a man with a ghost army he didn't control, a rogue AI hunting him, and a brilliant, terrifyingly smart woman dragging him to a shower. It was, he decided, a definite improvement. The 3 days following the liberation of Hannock were the loudest, most chaotic, and most profoundly unpleasant of Adrian Hale's life. Meridian Station, free of Ravel's tyranny and Helix's shadow control, was in a state of confused, joyous rebirth. The Galactic Compact, which had ignored the corporate-sponsored Academy for years, was now in a full-blown panic. A dissolved AI, a captured warlord, and the sudden, terrifying reappearance of the 13th Phantom Legion had turned their quiet political sector into the center of the universe. And Adrian, the mechanic, was the heart of it all. He had tried to return to Maintenance Deck 4. He had genuinely, honestly tried. He had put on his old, grease-stained fatigues and gone down to the underdock to help Jorg and Tala repair the plasma-scorched conduits. But he couldn't do any work. Mechanics, whom he had known for years, kept bowing. Thalok's engineers would stop their work to gravely nod at him. A group of Vex, who had never given him a second glance, presented him with a ceremonial and very sharp crystal shard, which Tala translated as a debt of life. He was, in a word, miserable. He was currently hiding in Mira's new lab. She had respectfully commandeered Ravel's old office at the station's apex, the one with the panoramic view of Gildan 4. She claimed the lighting was better for her retinal scanners. But Adrian knew she just liked the view. He was, naturally, tinkering. He was sitting on her floor, his back against a pristine, white plasteel wall, recalibrating the guts of a medical scanner from the Hannock lab. "I just don't understand it," Mira said, her back to him. She was pacing, her golden, Aurelian eyes fixed on a massive, holographic projection. "It's sloppy or it's wrong." "What's wrong?" Adrian asked, not looking up. He was soldering a microcircuit. "The compact hearing, I thought you were brilliant. You made the Vex ambassador cry." "Not that." She stopped, her hands on her hips. "Although he deserved it. I'm talking about this." She changed the projection. On one side, a spinning complex, silver-blue molecule appeared. "Your blood," she said. "The Aegis root, complex, stable, ancient, infinitely elegant." "You're making me blush," Adrian muttered. "And this," she said, projecting a second molecule beside it, "is the sample I took from Nate on Hannock, his royal bloodline marker." Adrian looked up. The second molecule was pathetic. It was small, flickering, and looked frayed. "The marker," Mira said, "is dissolving." "It's not a genetic trait." "Adrian, it's a temporary implant, a high-end, military-grade cellular tattoo, and it's fading. By my calculations, it will be gone in another 10 hours. Adrian put the soldering iron down. "So he's not a prince." "He's not even a duke," Mira said, crossing her arms. "He's just Nate, a very brave kid from the fringe." "Which means," Adrian stood, the pieces clicking into place, forming a picture he did not like. "Which means Helix, or Ravel. They faked it. They manufactured him." "They didn't manufacture him," Mira corrected, her voice sharp. "They manufactured his purpose. They found a kid, implanted this marker, and used him as his bait," Adrian finished, his voice cold. "He was bait, to lure me out. They needed his faked bloodline to react with my Aegis, to confirm me." "But that still doesn't make sense." Mira threw her hands in the air. The Legion Ravel was right about the protocol. They need 2 keys, the Aegis sigil and the true bloodline. They knelt to Celine's projection. They shielded you. But if Nate's bloodline was a fake, then where did they get the second key? The real bloodline. She stared at him as he stared back. The silence in the Apex office was total. "Mira," Adrian said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You told me my file was a fabrication. A Helix legend. To hide the sigil." "I did," she said, her fingers already flying across her console. "What if it wasn't just hiding the sigil?" he asked. "What if it was hiding everything? I've been running your Aegis root DNA against the Imperial database," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The full database. The one I politely borrowed from the Legion flagship's mainframe when they gave us a ride back. And I've been comparing it to the Ashfordian genetic tree, the one Ravel was looking for." She projected a new image, a vast, complex genealogical map that spanned 1,000 years. It started with one name, Celine Ashford. The line descended, through generations, through names and dates that meant nothing to him. "This is the official line," Mira said. "It ends 3 generations back, a cataclysm. All lines terminated. That's the public record." Okay, but it's not the real record. She typed a command. A new line appeared. A hidden line. One that had been scrubbed by the highest level Imperial encryption. It branched off, just before the cataclysm. A single, unbroken thread. It descended to a single, final, flashing node. The name on the node was not Adrian Hale. It was just a string of code, a genetic identifier. "That's you," Mira whispered, her golden eyes wide. "That's your DNA." The cataclysm was a lie. It was a hiding. Adrian felt like the ground had fallen. I don't... You're not an heir?" "Adrian," Mira said, her voice shaking with the sheer, beautiful, terrifying weight of the discovery. "You're the heir. The direct lineal descendant. The orphan file, the mechanic, was the most perfect cover story ever written. They didn't just hide your sigil. They hid you." He walked toward the hologram, his hand outstretched, as if he could touch the flashing code. "Then, Celine." "She's not just your empress," Mira said, her voice softening, her professional awe giving way to a human Aurelian warmth. "Adrian, she's your mother." It hit him, not like a blow, but like a completion. The birthmark he had hidden his entire life. The curse. It wasn't a curse. It was a gift, a shield, given to him by a mother he had never known, to keep him safe until he was ready. He wasn't abandoned in that orphanage. He was hidden. He was protected. "The Legion," he breathed, the final piece of the puzzle slamming into place. "On Hanek, they knelt to her projection, but they protected me." "Because you were standing right there," Mira said, a single, stunned laugh escaping her. "You were the entire protocol. In one person." They recognized both keys, the Aegis sigil and the bloodline. They were waiting for their shield bearer and their prince. He was a prince. He was an empress's son. He was a mechanic who was covered in salter fumes. He sank onto Mira's pristine chair, his head in his hands. "This is a lot," he mumbled. Mira, her brilliant mind finally processing the emotional and the technical data, sat on the edge of the desk. "Yeah, a lot covers it." As if the universe had been waiting for that single, quiet moment of realization. A chime echoed through the lab. It wasn't a station alert. It was a private message on Mira's most secure, most illegal, personal channel. "What is that?" Adrian asked, his voice muffled. "I don't know," Mira said, her brow furrowing. "The encryption, it's not Helix. It's not Legion. It's new." She ran the decryption. It took her less than 10 seconds, but she was sweating. The message was just text. A single, terrifying, anonymous line. "Helix core status acquired." Mira's blood ran cold. "Acquired by who we destroyed it. The war form." "Keep reading," said Adrian. "New designation subject 0. Trajectory confirmed. Destination, Umbral Rim. Warning. A new god has entered the machine." Silence. "The Helix core," Mira said, parsing it. "The AI, the central intelligence, wasn't in the war form. It escaped, and someone else caught it." "They're going to the Umbral Rim," Adrian said, the words tasting like ash. "Ravel said that's where she is." "Where your mother is," Mira finished. The game had changed. Their victory on Hanek wasn't a victory. It was a distraction. While they were busy liberating Meridian, a new, unknown player had just stolen the most dangerous AI in the galaxy and was taking it directly to the most powerful and most vulnerable person in the galaxy. The choice was made in that instant. The next day, Adrian Hale stood in the central plaza, now repurposed as the new Aegis Council chamber. Jorg, Tala, and representatives from all the major species on Meridian Vex, Thalox, and even a new, humbled human student delegate were seated. Adrian, Jorg began, his voice gruff, but his eyes proud. The compact is, let's just say, excited. They're sending a fleet, not of warships, of diplomats. They're talking about restoring the old accords. They're fine. Son, they're talking about you. They're talking about an emperor. All eyes turned to him. Adrian, clean, in a simple dark gray tunic that Tala had made, looked solid. He looked like himself. I'm not an emperor, he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried, clean and certain. I'm a mechanic. He paused. And I'm a son. He walked to the center of the chamber. The Galactic Compact wants a leader, a symbol, someone to sit on a throne, he said. I'm not going to give them one. I'm going to give them a rule. He placed a single, thin data slate on the central table. The Aegis Convention, he said. It's simple. That's Legion law, I answer. We protect the weak, regardless of species, faction, or blood. We value people over profit. We put the shield before the sword. He looked at the council, at the new, free people of Meridian. I am giving this law to you. Meridian won't be a transit hub anymore. It will be Aegis's anchor. You will be the new council. You will hold the compact to this standard. A throne is a target. A law is a shield. For everyone. Jorg, the old mechanic, took the slate. He read simple, powerful words. Shield before sword, people before profit. He nodded, a slow, deep affirmation. I can weld to that. I have to leave, Adrian said. The Helix AI. It's not gone. And I have to go find my mother. The junkyard dog was no more. In its place, in the main docking bay, was a new ship. It was sleek, angular, and coated in the same light-absorbing black and silver armor of the Legion. It was Tala's masterpiece. The Legion donated some parts, Tala said, grinning, as Adrian walked into the bay. The original Vex canopy, the car fuselage, and the human engines, they're still in there. But well, she got an upgrade. We're calling her the Aegis Dawn? Nate Arlen was there, standing by the ramp. He was no longer the trembling kid from the concourse. He was still small, but he stood tall. You're really going? Nate asked. Yeah, Adrian said, kneeling before him. To find your mom. Yeah, I am, Nate nodded, as if this was the most logical thing in the universe. The Aegis rule, Nate said. I'm teaching it to the new first years. I'm telling them about you. No, Adrian said, putting a hand on the boy's shoulder. Tell them about you. You're the one who taught me. The shield, it's not a magic light show. It's just a choice. You taught me how to make it. Nate, for the first time in days, smiled. A real, bright, brave smile. Go get her, Adrian. I will. Adrian stood and turned to the ramp. Hey, shield bearer. Mira was standing there. She was not in her lab coat. She was dressed in new, black, nano-weave fatigues that perfectly matched the ship. She was carrying two very large duffel bags. Mira, Adrian said, a slow, dangerous smile dawning on his own face. What are you doing? You didn't really think, Mira said, marching right past him and up the ramp, that I was going to let you go face a stolen, God-level, rogue AI, rescue a long-lost empress from 1,000 years of captivity, and navigate the most dangerous, uncharted sector of space alone. Did you? I kind of hoped, he said, following her. Good. She dropped her bags in the cockpit, which was now a stunning, holographic Vex Aurelian hybrid. She turned, her hands on her hips. Because you're terrible at this. You're sentimental. You're going to get yourself killed before you even clear the debris field. Right, and you're here too. I'm here to do the math, she said, her golden eyes flashing. I'm here to keep you honest. And I'm here because, well, she stepped closer. Someone has to fly the ship while you're busy glowing and being noble. He was standing in front of her now, the space between them humming with more energy than the Aegis sigil. I'm glad, he said. Me too, she whispered. She reached up and tapped him on the chest, right over the sigil, a gesture that was now uniquely, impossibly theirs. But we have a rule, from now on. Oh yeah. No more taking hits alone, she said, her voice a perfect mix of science and affection. If you ever decide to take another 21 beatings for some stupid, terrified kid, I'm going to be standing right there. And I'll be counting along with you, he laughed. A real, free, unburdened sound. He took her hand. It's a date. The ramp was sealed. The Aegis Dawn shot from the docking bay, a silver and black streak against the backdrop of Gildan 4. It powered up, faster than any ship in the system, and aimed for the black. In the void of space, unseen by any scanner, 13 ghosts watched it go. 13 spectral capital ships, cloaked from the universe, turned as one. They did not follow. Their mission was here, guarding the new Aegis Council. But in the cold, silent dark, they offered one last, profound salute. They oriented their ships not to Meridian, not to the dawn, but to the deep, dark, terrifying expanse of the umbral rim. And, as one, they knelt. The Aegis Dawn engaged its full drive, a flash of silver blue light, bright as a newborn star. And then they were gone.